right.
From the industrial wastelands of Michigan to the fruited plains of Iowa, this is the American
Why
Green.
relate to its sheer perversity?
You are the dead. Remain exactly where you are. Make no move until you are ordered.
We burn them to ashes and then burn the ashes.
Now we can see you. Clasp your hands behind your heads. Stand out in the middle of the room. Stand back to back.
Who can explain the fascination of fire? What draws us to it, whether we're young or old?
Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head.
And welcome to the American Greed Factory podcast. This is Nathan.
This is Conlon.
I think Matt's mute.
Andrew and Matt. All right.
There you go. There he is.
I don't think so. I was there. I didn't hear Andrew talk, so I waited for him, but I didn't hear him.
We saw you talking, and then we didn't hear anything. It must have just like caught up or something.
I was going to say, I don't think it's on mute from what I can tell, but...
No, we can hear you now.
Okay. I just didn't hear Andrew, so I was waiting, but then I was like, all right.
All is good with the world.
It is.
Oh, by the way, so anyone watching, I did not get punched in my right eye. I've got those masks that managed to irritate the shit out of my face, and so now my right eye is swollen up. I'm gonna go get that checked on Monday. So,
Well,
but they didn't take a hit arguing politics with somebody on a street corner. But yep, so here we are again. It is January 23rd, and all is right with the world.
Larry King is now dead.
Larry King is dead. The Matthew Stafford is leaving the Lions.
Oh.
What else is going on here on Sports Talk?
Yeah.
And the old director of Make-A-Wish in Iowa got indicted on embezzlement charges today.
That's wholesome.
Oh,
Really? Stealing from the cancer?
Hey, she looks the part. Let's
They'd
tell
never suspect it.
Yeah.
There is a special
That
place.
was their last wish, that they would embezzle the money.
I mean, she looks like she used it well on plenty of meth. So,
Grayson had this concept that we should use Make-A-Wish as a tool of American foreign policy, where you get kids to be like, I wish North Korea didn't have nuclear weapons, and then the Navy just heads out. It's like, we're making this wish happen. It's Make-A-Wish. We can't stop.
Yeah, we have to do it or the kid will be disappointed.
So we just incinerate North Korea. It's like, there you go, Billy.
we know you hated
You
Kim
can die
Jong-un.
I can die happy now. I've murdered millions. What was the thing you put in the notes about the NBA?
Oh, the Charlotte Hornets and LaMelo Ball.
I have no idea what's going on there.
Well, I mean, back when I put it in the notes, like he had scored his first double-double and triple-double of his career in the first couple weeks of the NBA season. And basically, the Charlotte Hornets were on a roll, but recently they've been losing every game. So everything's back to normal and right with the world.
Have they had a lot of players out on COVID or something, or
No, just I don't think the teams they seem to thrive on 3-point balls and fast breaks, but when they don't get that, they don't do well.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so like half the teams in the NBA.
I was gonna say that's most of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's most of the NBA now. Okay.
Yeah, well,
I guess
ever since like I think it's the Warriors popularized the whole like just shoot threes like it's a video game. Like who gives a shit?
And James Harden and the Rockets also did that. So yeah, when he was on the Rockets, now he's on the Nets, but still.
Oh, sorry. I guess I don't know enough NBA history to put actual good commentary into that.
Because Curry from the Warriors. Like if you look at the average NBA like 3-point shots attempted and made, like you look at the scale of like the top guys, like he's like 3 times above them. Like it's fucking crazy. Like they just are like, so once the Warriors, I think it started with the Warriors. At least I assume it did because they had success with it. But like, yeah. because I mean, the league used to be very center focused, like literally the position. Like, let's get tall guys. Now it's like, well, fuck, we can have as small guys as we want, if they're fucking taking threes from half court and making them. Like, who gives a shit?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, because Charlotte Hornets definitely fall into that category because they don't really have a lot of paint presence. They only have like one or two guys that can maybe rebound, and it seems like LaMelo Ball actually gets more rebounds than their center does, which is kind of sad. But
Yeah,
at the same time,
like, who's like the premier center in the league? Like, I don't even know any centers.
I don't know.
Is
if
Dwight
like-
Howard a center?
He's not. I wouldn't say he's premier. He's like, I don't even know what team he's on right now. I know he's on the Lakers last year, but I was gonna say I don't know if Giannis. I can never say his last name. You know who I'm talking about? For the Bucks.
Yeah,
Giannis
vaguely.
Antetokounmpo. Yeah, he's like. Not, I don't know if he's technically a center. I guess Joel Embiid from the 76ers is a center. Basically, he's probably the best center at the moment. But yeah, I was gonna say there's still post players that that dominate different parts of the game, but you don't really need one.
yeah, it doesn't seem like anybody really thrives on it. But every time I watch Charlotte highlights and stuff like that, they never do well in the rebounding department. But I guess I don't know how big of a deal that is anymore.
I mean, still.
Well, I mean, 'cause I always thought part of the game was like turning possessions around and getting points back off of opponents that way, but apparently maybe not as much anymore. I'm not
Well,
sure how that works.
Well, I like that they changed this. I'm not sure when they changed this. Maybe they changed this forever ago. But like, when the shot clock resets, it doesn't reset to 24. Like if you get your own rebound, like what's it reset to? Like 12 or something, or 16?
Yes, that's the resets to 12 like half the time.
When do they initiate that?
I can't remember, but like it's kind of up scoring in the league because you can't just like run the clock the whole fucking game.
Oh, okay.
But why not?
You can't play Larry Brown ball. It's like let's have great defense and the most boring offense in the world and just slow the game down to a halt like you're playing football.
Not anymore.
But no, NBA's been really nice to watch so far. The NFL's been okay for the playoffs, but we'll see if Brady finally loses. But I don't know about that.
Is he still in it? Okay.
Yeah, Buccaneers are facing off against the Packers.
Yeah, I have no idea who's good or. I knew the Pittsburgh was like almost undefeated, and then they lost in the playoffs.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I know they lost. I know that I think they went the furthest without losing, but then they lost their playoff game.
Yeah, well, they were like undefeated at one point, and then they lost to the old Washington football team, as they're called now. And then after that, they kind of like weren't playing the best. They lost to the Browns before the playoffs even started, and I'm thinking they lost another game before that, but then they lost to the Browns in the playoffs when the Browns didn't even have their head coach because he was out with COVID. So yeah, they didn't do the greatest, but oh well.
I know the Chiefs might face a rough game tomorrow too. So
yeah, that should be interesting because Patrick Mahomes got a concussion last week, and technically, like they cleared him, but I don't know, like if they just cleared him because they want the ratings, or if he actually is ready to go. Because usually you're not cleared from a concussion less than a week after that, but who knows?
Unless somebody has money.
Yeah. It's like we really need you to play to make this game, ratings bonanza. So how many fingers am I holding up? 15? Great. Get out there.
Just close one eye when you throw the ball.
Yeah, it's fine. Even if he had a concussion and he was messed up, he'd still be a better quarterback than most of the quarterbacks. So it's fine.
And somewhat F1 news: 2 more drivers got COVID in F1. So that's 4 people out of the 20 drivers in F1 got COVID.
Well, I heard that's because if you drive really fast, COVID can't catch you. So yeah.
I've also heard that. That's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know why, but
We are the podcast of science.
that's right. We're the podcast of record when it comes to COVID.
Well, my wife gets her shots Monday, so that'll be good.
Oh, that's good.
That is good.
I think the soonest I can get it is maybe in February, according to Iowa standards.
Yeah, and same
Depending
for me.
on if we still have enough of the vaccine. We didn't get enough of it, so.
Well, how it's set up in Iowa, it's it's healthcare workers first, and then like people in nursing homes,
Yeah.
and then like the 1B group is supposed to be people that are like service industry people, which I think I qualify. I don't know. I assume. I actually don't know.
I think
Well, I guess-
so.
The way I saw the schedule for February is basically if like you're a frontline like food or agricultural worker, you can get it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
which I don't know if I am or not. Like I kind of assume I am, but I don't know.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I know I am just because we make food related products and stuff like that as far as like packaging containers. So technically, I am, and I can go get it at my wife's work, and so can she in February supposedly.
And I gotta be around so many dipshit maskless customers.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because, like, do you guys have signs saying that you have to wear
Yep.
a mask and people just don't do it?
It's right there. Yep.
Yeah, I figured because I went to Hy-Vee today because I had to take my grandma out to get groceries, and they had signs everywhere, and there's still people not wearing them, and I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, how many people have to die for you to take this seriously? Like, I don't understand.
5 million.
Everyone
Care about
can.
anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't care.
Like I said, the masks are actively fucking my face up, and I'm still like, well, I guess I got to wear this. I mean, in Michigan, it's
mean,
a law. It's a $500 ticket, and they can just arrest you. They will just arrest you. They'll pull if you act aggressively in a store. They'll just come call the cops and they'll pull you out. So.
Speaking of that, Colin, I got a news alert on my phone that there was a fight at your Walmart today. Were you around for that?
No.
I don't know why, but they said there was a
I don't-
brawl. That's what the headline said, but
I
I,
mean,
don't
that-
know if that's.
I mean, that pretty much happens every day.
I just wanted. I was hoping it was
you'll
about
hear
masks.
commotion off in the distance,
and
and
you're
you
like,
don't
oh,
know
that again.
and you
Yeah.
don't know if it and like it takes a while. It's like, oh, that's laughter. Somebody's laughing at their own joke, and they're around 10 people, and it just sounds like, or it's like, oh, that's a fist fight.
Yeah, well,
As long as you don't hear the
apparently-
clap, clap, clap of gunfire.
Well, there's no guns involved, but I guess like two customers are fighting, and then the one customer's mom like joined in, and then the cops showed up, and then the mom tried to fight the cops, and that's all I knew.
Oh god.
Yeah,
I was worried it was about-
that seems normal.
seems pretty par for the course. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's like at least once a day.
you're like, oh, that again. Okay,
I just figured it was over Jack's Pizza or something. So I mean,
I don't know what it's.
Well, we had all the Jack's pizzas you could get today. We didn't run out of it.
Yeah, you can. They're stocked.
I mean, it was almost empty, but if you wanted one, we had them.
Yeah, they're in the back.
No, they're all up
Well-
front.
Oh, they're out front. Okay.
I don't have any back stock of Jack's pizzas. They all go out to the
They're,
front.
they're very popular.
Well, they're $2.50.
Per piece, right? Okay. Yeah.
Well,
I
'cause
haven't-
I think
Yeah.
the only thing cheaper is like Tostino's pizza, and those don't really fly off the shelves like the Jack's pizzas do. So
well, because last week I was at Hy-Vee getting the rest of my groceries for like produce and shit. There was a guy in front of me. All he bought was like 50 Jack's pizzas in like the cart or whatever. It's like, well, I'm hoping you're selling these in a restaurant. Otherwise, you have a really strict diet, sir. Like,
It's a very
only-
unusual diet.
breakfast, lunch, fuck off, and dinner.
Yeah. How did you gain 60 pounds in 3 months? Body by Jack's, yo.
I'm Jack.
Look at me, I'm Jack in the wrong direction. I'm the anti-Jack.
What was the pizzas they had? Oh, the Stouffer's French bread pizzas came back.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
those are. I've had those. Those have been a while, but
Yeah, they're back now. They're good. They have like a tangy sauce, and just for a French bread pizza, they're not bad. I don't cook them in the microwave. I cook them in the oven. But yeah, I got those for a while, and it was like, oh, I'd get a couple every week or so, and then they didn't have one. They're like, oh yeah, we're out of those. And I was like, what is this? A refugee colony? Where'd all
Yeah.
Stouffer's pizzas go? I mean, Jesus.
We got them in this week, but when I go to look at the item description of like it says deleted, so
Well,
oh,
we don't really have them back.
there's a shortage coming up.
Well, occasionally we'll just have so sometimes like even though we have the same warehouse as like every other Walmart around here, like we get different stuff for different stores. And sometimes if you can look it up in the warehouse, you can get it to your store, but not always. And sometimes it's just like when the warehouse is just clearing shit out, they're like, "Oh, I guess we left this box here.
You want
Oh, we don't sell this anymore. just throw it on a Walmart's truck, and then they'll just sell it. And so we get a bunch of stuff like that, where it's like stuff we don't sell or have never sold, just shows up one day.
Yeah, like child wine coolers. Good stuff.
We had a
Get
bunch
your
of that.
rescue.
I had multiple people this week ask me like where the like frozen daiquiris are, because in the summertime we'll use one of our freezer doors and fill them with those frozen daiquiri stuff, but on the other times we don't. They're just in the back, like not frozen, because we don't have to store them frozen. Much like those plastic tubes of that you can freeze. Like we don't have.
Popsicle 60.
Yeah, the popsicle ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we don't have.
I thought you were gonna say the COVID vaccine vials. We don't have to store them frozen. They're good at room temp.
Yeah, like those ones we don't have to store, which always infuriates me. It's like, here's this perfectly good freezer storing something that doesn't need to be frozen.
Yeah, this is a waste of freezer space. That's why Jeffrey Dahmer ate his victims, because it was a waste of freezer space.
We get the weird stuff here where there's a mix-up in the warehouse, and we'll get like, it's like, oh, it's a frozen pizza, or what? There was another thing. But it's all stuff from Canada that's supposed to be in Montreal. All it has is
That's cool.
French writing all over it.
Huh.
You get like Lestofer's pizza, and it's like your instructions are like in, you heat your oven up to 160. It's like, that's not hot enough. Oh, it's like, oh, this is.
Oh, it's in Celsius. Yeah, and
Well, we'll
everything
get,
is poutine or whatever. Good stuff.
We got Windex because I usually buy Windex at Sam's Club. I'll buy like the 12 bottle pack because it'll be good for a year, and it was all in French. Like it was just, it was lay Windex, and it was everything written on it was French, and I was like, this is weird. And sometimes we'll get the pop cans from Canada. Those don't have a return marker on them. So you got to watch those because you go to return those and oh, we don't take those. You got those from Canada. It's like, no, I got them from here. It's like, well,
Sorry,
we don't sell
don't take
Canadian pop bottles. You don't? Well, I'll go show you where they are. We don't care. Okay. So you got to watch those because they'll charge you for the deposit on them, but then they won't. It doesn't have the Michigan stamp on them. They won't give you the deposit.
Yeah, a lot of Walmart's great value generic stuff comes from Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get Le Windex and food that with like you got to know the cooking instructions because it's not in. It's even if it's because sometimes it's in French and English, but it's not in Fahrenheit. So it's like heat your oven to 160. It's like that doesn't seem hot enough to cook.
You just have to cook it for 3 hours. It's cool.
Yeah, it'll be good. Be
It's
nice
slow cooking.
temperature pizza.
Yeah, everybody likes a tepid room temperature pizza. That's what I think.
Yeah, that doesn't happen all the time though. It's just funny sometimes you get cleaning products with no English on them. But Windex, it's like how many user instructions do you need for that?
I hope you don't need too many, but yeah.
Unless you're cutting your Windex.
Point nozzle at face, open mouth, squeeze. That's
Step on this Windex, make it last another year.
it. Yeah.
Just
Gotta
cut it
cut it
with
with something.
ammonia.
Yeah.
Crying every time you use. God, these windows are clean, but I can't see.
Yeah. What is going on?
Oh, the irony! I made my windows so clean, but now I can't see through them.
Yeah, I can't enjoy it.
I still like the
Can't
guy
watch a
out here
bird smash into it.
who had a hot tub, and he was like, "Yeah, I found out if I put ammonia in it, it makes it really clear." I said, "Yeah, what happens if you mix ammonia and chlorine? You're reenacting World War One." It's like, yeah,
Not
I
a
never
great idea.
noticed it before. It's like, well, you have to keep it up. Is that true? I will go try it in your house. I'm not going to stand here and watch you.
The guy
That's-
didn't believe you because it wasn't one of the Q drops. He's like, oh, that was a...
Well, the thing is, he wasn't stupid. He just thought, oh, someone told me this cleans it right up. It's like, that is full of chlorine. You cannot put ammonia in your fucking hot tub.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good, but
There was a wrestler, a Japanese wrestler, like a year ago. She killed herself because she got bullied online. she was on a reality TV show called Terrace Place.
Okay.
It's basically like the real world, but in Japan. And they did something where like she got mad at somebody, and then like fans of the show got mad at her, and basically told her to kill herself. So she did, and one of the most
she
popular,
obliged.
one of the most popular ways to kill themselves in Japan is to do exactly that, just ammonia and bleach and just drink it down.
Yep.
Oh, Jesus.
That's a clean death. You're not going to go down screaming with that one. Yeah, that's weird. Did the people who told her that get in trouble?
Yes, they are being brought up on murder charges in Japan.
Good, they should. Because when you tell someone to kill themselves over something on a stupid TV show and they oblige, you should go to prison. Because you're obviously... I mean, I've never told anyone to kill themselves on the internet. I've wanted to, but I always like, I better not say
But
that.
you've written out But Nathan, have you written out handwritten letters on stationery? That's okay. But the internet.
Yeah.
Like,
No, the stuff I put stamps on is just full of vile and vitriol.
It's just it's personal. Yeah, it's fine. It's good.
There was also a weird kind of
But-
thing about like quasi racism that Dave Meltzer brought up, which I don't know if it's true or not, but like her mom is half Jamaican, half Japanese, and so she's a quarter Jamaican and a quarter and mostly Japanese, however that makeup works. So I guess she had like broader shoulders than other Japanese women, and I guess people would make fun of her for that, but also that she was a good wrestler because she just like had a bigger structure to throw people around. But I mean, she just looked like a regular woman. Like it didn't really, but in Japan apparently like she really stood out. It's like, oh, you're not Japanese, are you? Which is another like Japanese wrestler, woman wrestler I saw recently where it was funny. Like I saw a picture of her and she won something. Like, holy shit, she looks like a star. But like, I was like, is she cosplaying as Japanese? Like I didn't know if she was Japanese or not. And then it turns out, oh, she's like half Italian, half Japanese. That's why she kind of like at the right angle, she just looks like a regular old white lady.
I get sucked into culture Japan stuff on YouTube. Well, it's always transportation related because they have sleeper trains in Japan. They don't have very many of them. They have some.
Yeah.
And it's just these trains you sleep on. But it's not like if you pay a lot of money, it's like a room like we would think of, like in a hotel with a little mattress, a little sink, a little toilet. But if you pay like $70, you just like throw a mat on kind of this floor structure they've built with these semi-privacy walls, and you just lay there on the train and sleep.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you take your shoes off, of course. That's how you know people are in there, because they take their shoes off before they go in. And it's like, that's sort of cool. And of course, these trains are like super nice. Like they're,
Well, I
if
think
you pay the extra $5, you can get a shower on the train.
yeah, I mean they have that in Europe for like long trips and stuff, but it's just like a specific car. It's like called a sleeper car, but it's not like the entire train. Are you saying like this entire train is the sleeper
This was
train?
mostly the train, except for like a dining area. It's because they only run 2 of them, and I forget they run from way north to Tokyo. It's like back and forth, and this Japanese guy that spoke English he did things like that. And then it like hitchhiking in Japan, there's a whole culture around it, because you can pretty much get anywhere in Japan hitchhiking as long as you act nice. There's always guys that'll pick you up like, well, we're going this far. But their cars over there, they look more like computer consoles than even ours. This guy was talking to these dudes. There's one guy sitting there on a laptop in the passenger seat, and the guy driving's like looking over at him like, no, put that here. But their whole car is like lit up with different music and stuff playing, but it's like really bright graphics. It's like, what? It's still the country of the future. There's all this stuff going on, because whatever this guy was doing with a laptop, he was on the internet like the whole trip. Like they just must have had Wi-Fi hooked up all the way up.
I mean, get like a hotspot.
Yeah, or something. Yeah. My car keeps telling me I can turn on a Wi-Fi hotspot, but I always like, no, I'm not paying for that. But yeah, these cars they were like those little cube cars that they love in Japan, but this one, the whole dash was lit up. Like, it was doing all kinds of stuff.
Distracting
Like
the driver in all kinds of ways.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I was watching the dude type and like driving, like, oh, yeah, no, put that there. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. And this guy, the dude that was doing the hitchhiking, was American, but he spoke Japanese, so he was immediately like a celebrity. It's like because they'd pick him up and try to speak broken English, and he'd say something in Japan like, no, you don't have to do that. I can understand you. And they're like, oh, my God. should we stop and get some sake? Like, no, that's okay. It's not a big deal. My wife's Japanese. That's why I'm here. But yeah, sometimes I'll go down this weird Japanese rabbit hole on YouTube. It's like, what are they doing there? Everyone's being
Japan,
very
what are you
pleasant.
doing now?
Yeah, everyone seems very pleasant. But they're eating a lot of raw seafood, which scares me. It's like, ooh, don't do that. Cook that a little bit. We don't know what's in those oceans.
I don't know that like so you
Clean.
know they have chicken sashimi there, which means raw chicken.
Yeah.
Because like how they raise their chickens, they don't get salmonella.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
that's weird.
I just know my story about sushi has always been the same thing. Is when the fall of the Soviet Union happened, you know how they have what's that area called? That big base they have over on that side of the world. What's their big naval base? Vladivostok? Is that it?
Not sure. Sounds familiar.
But anyway, they couldn't maintain all these submarines, and they didn't want to pay to decommission them, so they just took them out in the ocean and just blew the scuttling charges on nuclear submarines. and they didn't even, it wasn't even Navy people. They just paid guys to do it. Like, can you drive it to this point? Yeah. Okay, and then you set the scuttling charges, and then you get up, get in a dinghy and drive over to our boat, and then it'll just to the bottom.
They just hired the trailer park boys to come scuttle some submarines.
Pretty much. I mean, they couldn't get Navy people to do it because it would be a crime. But if they could say, like, oh, scavengers just took the boats and blew the scuttling charges. Like, they took nuclear submarines. Okay, that's interesting. They did that like 6 times. And the only reason we know about it is Woods Hole Oceanographic lost their undersea rover. Because they're like, why? Oh, there's green phosphorus algae down here. And then the Navy showed up like, cut that loose, please. We'll get you a new one. It's like, that's not green phosphorus algae. Those are exposed nuclear reactors. And it's right off the bottom of Japan, too. Like, I wouldn't be eating that sushi.
But we know from that N1 submarine book that the sea is great at
water's a
filtering
great shielder of radiation.
So, because there's this book about it. I can't remember what it's called. There's an experimental sub that they built to go like deep underwater.
NR1.
And so it was built very compact, and so but it was nuclear powered. But they can only build the shielding on one side, and so they were just like. So, like, the people on the front of the sub, they were fine because they had shielding behind them. Everything behind the sub was just being irradiated.
Yep. That was the one that had the big Goodyear tire on the front so they could skim the bottom. That's the one that wasn't, didn't they doubt the safety of it or something? So Hyman Rickover, like, I'll go on it. I don't care. And he was just reading this big book the whole time. He's like, just captain the submarine. Just pretend I'm not here. He was like the father of the nuclear navy. It's like, I'm just here to prove to those senators that they're full of shit. It's perfectly safe.
But yeah, it's the thing. Like they had to like shut down the reactor when a guy would have to like go out and weld something so they didn't irradiate the guy.
Yep. The old NR1. It's in the desert somewhere now.
Huh. I figured they'd still be using it because I think it still holds the record for like the deepest dive, or is something else done, or has there been unmanned stuff that's dived deeper now?
Yeah, I don't know. It might still be in service. I'm not sure. I thought they got rid of it and built, or I thought they built a couple of them.
Well, it was built in like the 60s, right, or something like that. So, and they only built one of them, right?
I think. Well, they say.
Yeah.
But then somehow we've like, in the 80s we managed to like. Tap into Soviet like underwater communication cables, which is supposed to be impossible because they're filled with nitrogen, and if you breach the skin, it was supposed to alert them. But somehow we did that, and they said, "Oh, we did that with regular submarines." It's like, "Oh, we don't have regular submarines that can have that capability." It's like, well, the NRN was in San Francisco, so it wasn't that one. So God knows what we have.
Well, I mean, they talked about that in the Blind Man's Bluff book too, where they just had a regular submarine drop that thing on top of it that did it. It was able to tap the line, but through like inductive, so it didn't actually like tap the line. It would just did something.
Oh yeah, well that was the one that didn't decode though.
Oh, okay.
They actually tapped the lines at some point where they could actually decode, where they had to physically like interrupt the signal, and it was some kind of phase thing. I don't know. It's way beyond my intelligence.
Nathan let me borrow a bunch of submarine books and stuff.
Yeah.
For a while there, I was just reading nothing but submarine books.
You're
Yeah.
really submersed in submarines. Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Submarines are amazing. You know, there's only like, they talk about them like you think there's thousands of them. There's only like 200 active submarines in the world. Like a lot of people didn't know that. Like there's like more destroyers than there are submarines.
Well, I mean, the
Well,
shit's
it costs
expensive.
so much
So.
money. Yeah. Because there's only like, what is there, like, there's only like 68 nuclear submarines active in the world. Now there's more than that, but they're not all active.
Oh, okay.
So we have a lot of submarines we're waiting to get rid of. Because like those Los Angeles submarines, I think they started building those before I was born. But yeah, submarines are cool to read about. Smartest people in the world driving a nuclear reactor around in the ocean. It's a weird idea.
And there's absolutely no good way to die in a submarine.
No,
They're all
there's no
awful.
like clean death.
You get set on fire by the thing that makes oxygen, ironically, because it touched water.
Yep.
Salt water gets on batteries. It creates a fire.
So creates sulfuric acid you
Yeah.
can breathe in.
Yeah. Yeah, they're. Yeah, you're just hoping for an implosion because it'll happen so fast. There's no way to process your own death. So, because otherwise you're drowning or you're suffocating, or yeah, it's everything on a submarine. Every way to die in a submarine is awful.
Or you're dying of intense radiation poisoning.
Yeah.
Speaking
I
of
think this has been the best Navy recruitment video ever. This is great.
Yeah, I was reading all those books and I was like, maybe I should join the Navy and get on a submarine. And then I joined the Marines.
And you're like, I don't think I'm gonna do that.
Well, mostly because I looked at the standards for the Navy. I was like, I could do that. And I looked at the standards for Marines. Like, I don't think I could do that. So that became the one I went for. Anyways.
Makes sense.
I made a little progress on this. Not much. I'm still damn. You can't see any details at all, but I'm still working on the weathering. And these things, you want to talk about death traps?
Is that the U-boat that's the most prolific German U-boat?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
That was just paper towels. No worries. Yeah, I think that was the most prolific Atlantic. I think that was the most prolific one in the Atlantic.
Oh, okay.
They had a lot of different the Germans had a lot of different U-boats, but I think that one was the most common. What was it? The most common design? It's still amazing. They just had guns on it. The guys they'd surface and start shooting at planes.
Did anybody watch that Tom Hanks Navy movie yet?
I wanted to, but it's on Apple and
The Greyhound or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? I haven't watched it yet. I could watch it, but I just haven't.
Well, I guess Tom Hanks wrote that.
He read a bunch of books, and I guess
But people say it's very straightforward and pretty bland, but I guess still exciting nonetheless. That's what I've heard about it.
Yeah, he talked with him and Dan Carlin did a special podcast about it.
Huh.
And he talked about the story a little bit, and he's like, yeah, a lot of it's just straightforward life aboard a ship at that time when, it was technology was not on our side, but numbers were. So, but you could, U-boats are very difficult to find and destroy because, I mean, they had things like sonar and radar, but there's nothing like what we have now, where it's like, oh, we can tell by its screws, it's this type of. No, it's just like there's something over here and it's metal. Start firing at it.
Or is that other Apple movie that like Chloe Moretz is in? It's like Shadow in the Sky or something, and the trailer made it look kind of cool, but I hear it's awful.
Yeah, I haven't
Well,
seen that one.
Well, what I'm looking forward to is Cherry with Tom Holland.
Oh yeah, that's the Russo's film, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it comes out in theaters like a month before Apple, but I'm not going to buy Apple Plus. So I'll probably just go Like, I don't know, try and see it in theaters maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, the other Apple one I hear it's the one about the coach. I hear that one's good. You know what I'm talking about? It's like a guy who's like a football coach and he
Oh
becomes
yeah,
like
you mean Ted Lasso? Yeah.
yes, that. I hear that's good.
See, I thought
Yeah,
I
that
could get
show's
Apple,
great. That's a very
I
good
thought I
show.
could get Apple TV for free because I bought a new Apple device
Yeah.
a
You
while
should've.
back, but it was only for the device because I was just going to put it on my computer, which is like 7 years old. It was like, no, you have to put it on your phone. It's like, I'm not watching a movie. Me and David Lynch are not watching a movie on my phone. You
I was
can
gonna
just
say because when I got the phone that I'm on right now, like I got free Apple TV for a year. That was last February, and like I can watch it on my Amazon Fire Stick and everything. So
Oh, okay. Well, for
Yeah.
some reason, mine didn't. But
there
this was
should be a way to do it, but I'm not sure
Yeah,
exactly.
if you can just download an app and put your login information. But-
Yeah, that's what I did, and it seemed to work.
maybe I'll try that and watch Greyhound maybe on my Apple Watch.
Yeah, let us know how it is because it looks like I'd fall asleep in the first 10 minutes of it. It's what's that one movie where he's on the ship and the one guy's like, "I'm the captain now." What is that called?
Oh, Captain Phillips.
Phillips.
Yeah, that one, Captain Phillips. Yeah, that one was okay, I guess. I don't know.
So if that guy makes a cameo appearance, you're in. That's what you're.
Yeah, I think he's in it actually. But it's the other way around. He's the captain, and then Tom Hanks takes it from him, and he's like, "I'm the captain now." And then everyone laughs because it's an inside joke.
It's like, haha, it's the 40s. Racism's fine. Haha.
Yeah.
I remember my son was telling me they had a kid from, I don't know, he's out there. I could ask him. I think he was from Nigeria, but he talked the same way. And they're like, we want you to say, I am the captain now. And that kid was so happy because he goes, that's a big movie where I'm from. They love that. It's because there's people from Africa acting in it, even if they're the bad guys. So he would always do it, and he sounded exactly like that guy.
That's
'Cause he looked
awesome.
like him, too. He was always like, I am the captain now.
So
You
then
know,
it,
same way
sorry.
of talking. No, it's fine.
Have any of you guys seen the movie Good Times? You know that movie, the Safdie
Yeah.
brothers. The
Robert.
guy from Captain Phillips is in that movie. He's a security guard at the amusement park that they beat the shit out of. He's in that movie.
No, I guess I didn't realize.
Is Robert Pattinson in that one?
Yep.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah.
Where he tries to have sex with a 12-year-old or something like that too. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't. Well.
Well, he kind of leads her on, but yeah, he doesn't. So
He was more just trying to use her for a car to drive around in. He wasn't trying to actually.
That vaguely reminds me of a joke I meant to use on Born on the 4th of July. Because there's a scene in that movie where you have Tom Sizemore, who's like a disabled vet, and they're like playing poker, and he's like, I'm going to fucking kill you. You owe me $2. I'm going to fucking kill you. And I wanted to say a joke. We're like, Tom, we haven't started filming yet.
Yeah. Hey, cool off, man.
He's like, what?
There's a camera. Oh, there it is.
I'm
Well,
not
so
reading my
anyway.
line.
We read a book this week.
Well, it took me forever, but oh well.
Yeah, we read a book. I mean, it was an interesting book. I didn't think I'd like it, and I did.
Okay.
It was Hitman: My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling by Bret Hart, which I read, and I liked it more than I thought I would.
I suggested this because, I've been getting into wrestling so much, but and I like all the wrestling podcasts I've listened to, kind of everything always kind of comes back to Bret Hart.
Yeah.
And I just really don't know. I only vaguely know the history of Bret Hart, so I was like, well, fuck it, let's just get the book.
This is the comprehensive history of Bret Hart and his family.
Yeah.
I'll let you take the lead on this.
Well, one thing I want to know, because I think early on they explained the terms, but I wonder, but later on they don't explain them a lot. So I wonder if you have any questions on certain terminology and what it means, because I kind of know all the wrestling terms, but I was wondering if you have any questions.
Well, we talked about a lot of the stuff like the heels and product, and what was the other term when you're being a bad guy, but you're not getting paid for it. I remember some of these terms we've talked about where it's like you're being a bad guy, but you're it's not like the role you're supposed to be playing. You're kind of destroying your career. What was that term?
Well, I mean, there's babyface and there's heel, but I'm not sure if.
Well, there's also jobber, which is basically you never do anything and you're just kind of somebody's.
Yeah, you're just there. You're just there to lose and make somebody look good.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these terms kind of resonate in skilled trades too. I've heard terms like that. They don't have quite the same meaning, but yeah.
Well, like, you know, there's a stuff when they say like someone's going over, and I was wondering like you'd read those like going over what, and like that just kind of means like you're winning, but they say it's like
Yeah.
going over and stuff like that.
Yeah, I read it on Kindle, so it conveniently, like, I could just tap on it, and it's like it would immediately reference it in the book. So
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if like they had a term of glossaries anywhere in the book. I didn't see one.
no, they don't in the book, but for some reason, Kindle, like, people add them.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good.
So if you're online, because there was a lot of like annotations, like press this word. Okay, now I know what that means, and you could move on from there. But that's you have to have your Kindle hooked up to your Wi-Fi to do that, which I usually do because I don't think about it.
Yeah, they,
I don't know. I thought all the terminology is fairly self-explanatory, like juicing and all this other stuff in there.
yeah.
I mean,
There's 3 different terms for getting blood. It's like getting some color, getting juiced,
getting some pop.
yeah. wearing the crimson mask. Yeah, there's like several terms.
Well, I thought like getting the pop was just basically like something that like put the crowd over the top and like got an illicit reaction out of them.
Oh no, well yeah, pop is just reaction. That's when the crowd like really like when they all react at the same time. That's what a pop is.
Okay.
That's that. But yeah, this starts with his early life. You have his dad, Stu Hart, who he marries like a girl from New York, right? And then like
Yep.
they all move to Canada, and Stu Hart's just kind of like, I don't know, he's just like known for like almost like amateur wrestling, almost like UFC stuff, and he's like constantly teaching people how to wrestle. When they call it about getting, but they referred to it as getting stretched out in the dungeon. And you just hear people screaming down in the basement because he's like putting some weird like hold on them that they can't get out of, and they're screaming for their lives. So this is basically where Stu trains people on how to wrestle, which is basically getting tortured. Yeah, it seems like Brett's life and during childhood kind of sucked. Although I did like,
It seemed like a magical mixture of being around a bunch of wrestlers, but then moving around like the darkest parts of Canada.
yeah,
And it's like some really bad areas. Like this is a mining town where everyone's drunk and they just hate everyone.
Yeah, it did come up like what you think of Canada is just like happy people in the cold, like affably doing things, and maybe
No.
they're slightly drunk. Like, no, this is just like fucking whatever like methed out town you can think of. It's just like, but just like wider stretches between.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of like here where it's 100 miles between Methburg and Methville and Canada, it's like 2,000 kilometers. And that's if you don't die, you know, the freezing cold. And there just seemed to be towns that had like a culture of these guys work in the mines and kill each other. Welcome.
Yeah.
It was, it seemed like almost, I did a lot of speed reading in that part of it because it seemed almost repetitive. It's like, oh, here's another hellhole in Canada. Here we are. But I've actually heard that about towns in Canada before too, especially like in the, you know, where they were. Like
Also
in the
just like
territories and stuff.
Also, just like this way you find out about wrestling in this book is what a wild, wonderful, and terrible thing the wrestling world is.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like synthesized violence for the entertainment of people who really like violence. At least sort of evolved later.
Well, also, like, here's the thing about like the people involved. It's almost like stand-up comedy too, where it's just kind of like an amorphous, or what do you call that? Like an uncentralized collection of people doing the same thing, and that's why like none of these people ever unionize. But it's also a place where it's like you can be a felon and be a wrestler. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah, there seemed to be a home for a lot of different people in wrestling. But boy, what a hard road to get to anything equating even $20,000 a year. Like it's, oh my God. It's like, you really got to love this because you're not going to, paying your dues can be a 20-year arc.
So yeah, so it's a very famous wrestling family. His dad runs Stampede Wrestling in Calgary. They go all over the place, and they have a weekly television show. which at one point is like it's like the #1 television show in like Saudi Arabia. Is this Canadian
Okay.
wrestling show, which just seems weird.
Yeah, that is odd.
And it seems to like somehow it never brings in money. They're constantly broke, but also they just have like all this acreage and just stuff. And like when things are good, they buy a Cadillac, and then when things are bad, they just have more broken down Cadillacs in the front yard. It's funny, like when Brett was like, he was like telling his class about stuff. He's like, my dad owns a wrestling company and runs a TV show, and we have a bear that lives under the front porch. And they're like, and even those teachers like, shut the fuck up, Brett, you're full of shit. It's like, no, it's
Yeah.
real.
I don't buy any of that.
Nobody lives like that.
I could see one of the two, but both, get out of here.
So it's a very large family, which is maybe why they constantly had money trouble. Because like, yeah, we should have more kids. If we don't have any money, it's like, fuck it.
Literally. Fuck it.
yeah. And so and then at some point Brett's like kind of like running Stampede Wrestling when it's at its best, like he's booking the show, as they say. Which when they say when you say like the booker, it's essentially like the person is. You think of it in TV terms as the head writer. That's what the booker is.
Yeah.
They essentially come up with how the match finishes. They choose who wins, but everything else is kind of up to the wrestlers to figure out the rest of the match. But like the booker is like, well, this is how the match ends, but you can do everything else.
You can make all the turns you want to as long as this is the result. And if not, we're going to fight for real later.
Yeah, so they're traveling over Canada. There's like a cast of characters, which I can't remember, because like the most memorable parts are kind of the WWF stuff. But like the first like third of the book, it kind of like goes through like 10 years of history pretty quickly, and then like it slows down for WWF, where it's like each chapter is like a month.
Yeah, there's only a few parts in the first part of the book that stands out to me, and it's mainly just the depression of Calgary and Edmonton as places to live.
Oh, when he goes to Japan, that's pretty neat. The stuff there, or when he goes to Puerto Rico, and just how like crazy it is there, because like you know, down there it's like, you know, wrestling is sacred, and like people still believe in it, and so like when you're the heel fucking over the local talent, you have to run when the show is over because you might get stabbed by the local population.
Yeah, that crowd gets pretty crazy. They are invested in this as if you're Jesus.
Yeah, so he's trained. He's trained by his dad on how to wrestle, but he's also there's two Japanese wrestlers that are just like hanging out, because like the place, like the house they're at, is just constantly just rotating with like wrestlers that are working for the company from like all over the place, and so that kind of like leads into like how, you know, what gives Brett his talent is that he's learning a wide swath of wrestling from like all over the world, like kind of like all at once. And he's kind of, and even though the rest of the family who are wrestlers like have that same access, like he's the one that kind of makes an art form out of it, where the other ones, well, I mean, Owen's good too, but like the older brother, like Bruce, he's kind of just seems to never click with him, and he's always constantly scheming. Yeah, the older brothers are kind of just like seem to be total shitheads, but
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually I think Stampede Wrestling goes under, and Brett gets a contract with WWF. And I didn't know he was he was there like when the first WrestleMania was going on. Like I didn't know like that's how long he was there. Essentially since like 1985.
Oh, okay.
Because he was working for the company during the first WrestleMania, but he wasn't like on the card. But he did get on the
I
card.
remember him like in the early to mid 90s as being a guy.
Yeah, well, that's when he got the biggest. But like he had a match in WrestleMania 2, because he was tag teaming with his brother-in-law Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
Okay. Cool name.
And they were you have Bret Hart, you had Neidhart, and you have Jimmy Hart, the mouth of the South. And then he says, "Fuck it, call us the Hart Foundation," because they wanted to do something else, and they became the Hart Foundation. Which there's throughout the book, there's like multiple iterations of the Hart Foundation, but this
Yeah, that seems to come up as a concept many times, but change form a little bit each time.
Yeah. So yeah, and then yes, I watched some of the. Oh yeah, this also like when he's in Stampede Wrestling, he does a lot of matches with Dynamite Kid, who's from England.
Okay.
If you go back and watch his matches, like they're pretty amazing, especially for what he was doing at the time. But because he was a smaller guy, like just nobody paid attention to him. But you can watch matches of his back in the day, and it's like, oh, that was a fucking awesome match. Like that's kind of like modern wrestling almost, because a lot of high flying stuff, and like those rings weren't built for high flying stuff, so it was even more of an effort and an accomplishment that they could do it.
Yeah.
But things did not go well nothing ends well for any wrestler, but especially Dynamite Kid, who like really fucked up his back and then did pain pills to cover up the pain until eventually he just paralyzed himself.
Yeah. They basically did so many pain pills he didn't register spinal injury.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until his legs stopped moving. He's like, this might be a problem.
Yeah. He became a real bad racist.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Wrote a book. And he only died like 4 years ago. So
He lived that long?
yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, it must have not been probably the shadow years were not good. I just know what I read from the book. I don't know anything about him outside of that.
So yeah, now it's like but like yeah, when he's at WrestleMania 2, they're like in powder blue like trunks, like that's like their coloring, and it wasn't until later where they got the pink, and he specifically and this is where he became like Bret the Hitman Hart, so like he started as a heel in WWF, so he was a bad guy.
Yeah.
And so like one of the lady making the gear, like she made him pink gear especially to piss off the crowd. And then Vince McMahon saw that. It's like, that's it. That's what you've been missing. And so like the rest of his career, it's like pink and black were his colors. But like they were initially chosen just to piss off the audience. They'll probably make them think like that's gay. That makes us even madder.
No, I mean the book's really. I mean, he quit Stampede Wrestling to go to WWF before it folded. But the understanding was that Vince was going to pay his dad $250,000 plus 10% of the gate in Canada territory.
Yeah, but then
that never materialized.
Yeah, they like just stopped going to Canada, like almost to like specifically fuck over his dad.
Yeah, which was a really fucking dick move. Because it sounds like, I mean, it doesn't seem like that much money to really part with. Because it seemed like everybody was getting bought out anyway. Because that was Vince's way of like closing territory and consolidating with buying out and forcing closure.
Yeah, so the way so apparently, and well, that's what he says in this book is like apparently, wrestling was divided in territories. Like, so like Vince had like the New York territory, and then there was the South. There was like the Southeast territory and stuff like that, and then California in there somewhere, and that's what the NWA National Wrestling Alliance was. Sort of like when they got together, it was entity unto itself, but then they would gather together and kind of like, but apparently like it started out like that to avoid like a monopoly status or something. So because they never joined together as one big wrestling company, then they wouldn't have to deal with the government or something.
Oh, okay.
Antitrust that's what they're avoiding, antitrust laws for some reason. I don't know. I was also mentioning stuff early on where he's talking about like early TV, like wrestling was very prominent because of how it was lit. It like made for how lighting was done at the time and how cameras picked up TV. Like wrestling made sense for television.
Oh, okay.
Because it was just like nothing moved. You lock the camera down, the lights just like shone straight down. So like boxing and wrestling were very popular in the early days of TV.
They're just easy to broadcast.
Yeah. There's actually some interesting stuff where like Dave Meltzer brings up about like cable television, where like wrestling had a lot of firsts for cable television. It was like the first cable program to reach 1 million viewers, and the first one to reach 5 million viewers. Like, wrestling's very integral to like various advancements in television. But,
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to figure out where to. I'm like forgetting everything I was thinking about this book.
Let's talk about juicing. One of the things that really stood out to me in this book was how much these guys used steroids and things like that.
Oh yeah,
and
that's it.
painkillers and
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, it's like at some point, like Brett gets a bad knee injury and he starts taking steroids just to fix the knee injury. And I didn't know Brett was on steroids because he doesn't necessarily like he's a big built guy, but he looks like big and built in a way that's accomplishable. Like it's not like he didn't do drugs to get that body. It felt like he could get that body.
yeah.
But yeah, he started doing it too. But yeah, that's a very big theme in the book. Is just all the drugs and painkillers and alcohol. It's a very different world nowadays. There's a lot of wrestlers nowadays who are just straight edge because they love wrestling and they grew up seeing all the horror stories happen in front of them, and they decided like I want to be a wrestler, but I don't want to do drugs.
I want to die at 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which there was the Joe Rogan, one of the recent Joe Rogan podcasts. He interviewed the Undertaker, and I haven't listened to it yet. But he was critical of like the current crop of people for being soft, and there's too many video games in the locker room. It's like, and one of the guys responded to him, was like, "Well, do you want us to do painkillers and drugs until we kill ourselves like you guys did?"
Yeah. Well, I one thing in this book is like when they were describing that, what struck me, because I reread some passages, and it's like this was just like part of the world. Like this was how you made it as a pro wrestler. Because these guys, I mean, some of them were doing steroids just to be ridiculous, like monster people.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are doing steroids because they need a paycheck next week.
Yeah.
And their knee was fucked up, or their back was fucked up, or something. And it's like, well, this will get you through.
Yeah, because like
if you take a week off, good luck.
Yeah, because at this point, there's no guaranteed payment, so like you only get paid if you work.
Yep.
And like the schedule is grueling. Like they're on the road like 300 days a year.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's the worst work schedule.
I mean, there's only like one television show, but they have what they call house shows, which are untelevised wrestling events.
Yeah.
And like those are like you're doing 4 house shows a week and then 1 TV show. Yeah, and they talk about the money. It's like, well, that seems pretty good. He's making like $4,000 to $6,000 a week. It's like that seems pretty good, but also it's like what you're doing to your body, and you have to pay for all your flights and hotels and stuff because you're an independent contractor that works exclusively for one company.
You're traveling. You have 60 hours of travel time, and then show prep and everything. But by the time you're filming, and it's like you've worked 100 hours in a week.
Oh yeah, there's several. The sad deaths to drugs and alcohol are almost expected, but then there's just like several, just like people fell asleep at the wheel and went off the road and died. It's like every 5th death in this book is like somebody just going off the road and dying and on the way to the next show. But yeah, you get some of the inside with Hulk Hogan, where it's like Hulk Hogan's just a fucking liar who just wants the spotlight as much as possible. But that's to be expected.
Yeah, I wasn't greatly surprised by the Hulk Hogan stuff, but yeah.
But he also, I don't think he ever wrestled him too much, so he didn't have a whole lot to say about Hulk Hogan other than like his few instances where it's like, oh, he's just a fucking liar. Although when you get through this book, it's like, oh, everyone's a fucking liar. It's like Bret Hart.
Yeah, I was going to say, no one came out of this with clean hands. These guys were all like.
Well, even like Bret Hart, it's like I think mostly he's the most respectable person in this book, but also his infidelity is just unconscionable.
Well, I mean, he said either that or he does drugs and steroids
Yeah,
and shit and pills.
which
So it's
is like, oh boo hoo, like I had to sleep with women because I'm lonely and my wife sucks. So, but I didn't do drugs.
well, I mean, looking at the book and shit, it's his own fault for marrying her because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to marry her, and she treats me like shit all the time. And always says she's gonna leave me, but then he marries her and has kids with her, and it's like, I think our relationship might get better, and it's always in the dumpster, and it's like, yeah, just don't marry her then.
But,
Jesus.
I mean, they got like married in like the '80s, so like that was probably part and parcel with every relationship probably then. So.
Oh, I know, but
I mean,
at the same
like,
time,
really, the stuff, the sort of like lifestyle he was leading a rock star lifestyle. Which, if you look at the rock stars at that time, they're leading pretty much the exact same lifestyle.
Yeah.
But the amount of women he sweeps is kind of surprising, being because he's doing it during probably the height of the AIDS pandemic or epidemic or however you want to say it, crisis. There you go.
Yeah, I was sort of wondering about that because he was basically like having weird groupie sex in like large and small cities all across the North America.
Oh, and all over the world too.
Yeah, and it's like this guy's never, I don't hear about any STDs.
But also, like, the thing about him is like he's always safe. Like he makes the point that like in his 23-year career he never hurt any. I mean, like he physically hurt people in the ring, but like he never at the end of a match he never like people could always make their next show. He never injured somebody to the point where they can never work again.
Yeah, they weren't being stretchered out. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's amazing. That's an amazing feat. But also there's like some stuff where he's talking about like Ric Flair and like him throwing the chops, and it's like that's just unnecessary. That's just hurting people. It's like, why would you do that? Hold on as I cut my forehead with a razor that I spit out of my mouth.
Yeah.
well, I mean, he does have a few wrestlers like he seems to really enjoy working with and thinks the world of and stuff, but like most of them, like he just like, oh, he's a shitty person, and a lot of the people are shitty people. But at the same time, it's like I think all of these people are really, just morally repugnant people that have to get by working, every day of the year, multiple hours and shit. So it makes sense. But at the same time, it's like,
Well, at least with Bret Hart, it's like no matter what they think of each other, like when they get in the ring, he's going to be professional. But like not everybody else is like that.
yeah,
He seemed pretty dedicated to his craft.
Yeah.
Like I respected him for that. As like, well, he is dedicated to the art of this in a way that like I've never heard anyone say they love this as much as he did. He fully acknowledging like it was very destructive lifestyle at the same time.
Yeah. I like the one going through this book, like they'd come up like with big matches and I'd go and watch it, and there's some stuff like, oh, I didn't know like he started that. But I like the ones where like, usually when you throw the person to the turnbuckle in the corner, like they go back, they turn and they go back first into it. And he invented this one by accident where he's so tired he couldn't turn around, and he just went chest first into the turnbuckle and fell backwards. And I've been watching all these matches, and when he does that, it's like great. It's like, and like it must like nobody. I haven't seen anybody else steal that, so that's kind of interesting. Because
I'm sorry. I found a picture of Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan juicing themselves. And they're both like old and look like shit. Because I was looking up some of the wrestlers as we're talking about it, because I hadn't looked them up when I was reading the book, because I was just trying to focus on reading as much as possible. Because like the whole instance, like when Ric Flair joins WWF and then they're like going up in his hotel room enjoying the party, and they're all pissing on his bed, and they're all like having fights with Vince McMahon, who's drunk before the all the drug stuff comes into effect. And I was like, that sounds like a stupid fucking party. Like, I can't imagine why anybody would have fun pissing on somebody's bed and fighting each other while they're doing a shit ton of alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, well, also, these guys are on downers and alcohol and uppers and cocaine.
It sounded good at the time. At the time, it made sense. Upon reflection,
Yes, like I said before, like, yeah, they're on the road a lot. They're away from their families and friends. They're, working all the time and getting hurt and not getting paid for their time was well enough and stuff like that. But there's points where he's making like $300,000 a year and he says he's still broke and doesn't have any money. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I mean, they said the WWF contracts, like you had to pay for your flights home. So yeah, technically I can see how you eat up a lot of money doing that. But at the same time, it's like, Jesus Christ, you're making $300,000 a year and you're still broke. Like, what the fuck?
Well, his time is that he's making $4,000 to $6,000 a week, and then like when he does like if he does a WrestleMania, that's like a $60,000 payday just for one show. That's like,
and I can see why he's pissed when he doesn't get the main action when he's doing all the work, because they're getting paid $5,000 and everybody else is getting paid $60,000. Is a kick in the fucking face. But at the same time,
he seemed weirdly loyal to Vince because I think he was probably getting underpaid to what other people were making, but I don't necessarily know what other people are making. But
well, I mean, he seems to have a very high opinion of himself. Not that most people don't, but at the same time, he seems to. I don't know.
He's the best there was, the best there is, the best there ever will be. that was his catchphrase, which I guess he stole from The Natural, which I'd never seen.
Yeah, and I don't know.
I was like the moments where it's like, I have this idea. Well, it's not my idea. I stole it from a Western I saw, but it'll be new and exciting for wrestling.
Well, he seemed to do that a lot with like Cool Hand Luke and other films
and
different books and shit like that. But like, I don't know. Like, I think it was cool. Like Stampede Wrestling kind of did like the first ladder match, and then like he tried to bring that in, and people stole it and shit. And then him saying like he came up with like the table slam and stuff like that, and it was like, oh, that's cool. So there's a lot of origination with all these different things between ladder matches, table slamming, and like the modern day like story build. But yeah, like a lot of his family, like his mom and dad were fine, just they don't seem very happy throughout the whole movie, or not movie, goddamn the book. And then fucking like his older brothers, like Dean seems like a horrible piece of shit, and so does fucking god damn it, I can't remember the other one now.
Bruce.
I think it's Bruce, but also Smith, I believe, was the older one. I can't remember anymore.
Is that the one that died from like kidney failure in like the pool upstairs or in the bathroom upstairs?
No, Dean is the one that died from kidney failure. But Smith, he hasn't really talked about later on in the book, but he wasn't really a decent person to him. Like, it seemed like a lot of his family were just basically pissed at him all the time because they didn't think he was helping the family out enough or giving them enough money or action. Like, Bruce just seemed, because he was talking about, like, oh, Bruce didn't have bad luck. He'd have no luck at all. But he'd always, like, write NAD shots into everything and all the blood and everything else. And it's like, nobody wants to see that match.
And then one of the... And then at some point, Brett's the Intercontinental Champion. And they go
scratch the door, fellas. Are you done?
They go to Wembley Stadium for a pay-per-view, which the crowd there is fucking crazy because typically,
Yeah.
Matt.
Sorry.
They don't go to the Britain typically with pay-per-views like big shows like that, so like the crowd is fucking crazy there. And so he's gonna drop the title to the British Bulldog, who's Davey Boy Smith, and so this is a 37-minute match that's considered one of the best matches of all time, and the British Bulldog was fucking high on crack and didn't know where the fuck he was.
Nice.
And this is where like you really get to like, okay, this is when you learn like kind of what an artist Brett is, because he's directing the whole match, and he just like figures it out. It just like without you knowing whatsoever. You watch that match, you won't know this guy's high on crack. You figured like everything was go as it's supposed to, because that's just what a great wrestling artisan that Bret Hart was.
These are professionals.
Yeah, because there seemed to be few people he could work with where they actually like could work out a match in their head and talk about it and actually execute it perfectly. Because there seemed to be a lot of people, because he always talked about the poor workers and the stiff people, the people that'll actually like rough you up the whole match instead of just treating you nice and making sure you go home without being injured. And they're just like, all that stuff, because like Vince McMahon, like he was talking about in the book, it's like, he seems to have a bodybuilder fetish, and he definitely does.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like I didn't even remember like he started like a bodybuilding federation thing, and I didn't even know about that. So it was interesting. Like they didn't really talk about it a hell of a lot, but basically just like, oh, it's a horrible idea, and they get all these benefits.
It was a giant failure. So,
I mean, it's just something where it's like even at one point where one guy storms out of his office after saying Vince McMahon made sexual advances towards him but like Vince McMahon doesn't do anything because their company's reputation's on threatened at the moment, so he just lets it go.
Well, also,
Whatever.
there's like the time where like they're gonna start testing for steroids, and so that's kind of like, you know, like Brett's like, oh, that's fine, I'll stop doing steroids, you know, because it seemed easy for him to stop doing it. But like for other people, it's like that's the only way their career is made is me doing steroids. You know, people like the Ultimate Warrior, which he constantly says was just a terrible wrestler. Like the only thing he could do was his entrance, and like and then it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, and he seems to have a low opinion about quite a few people in that regard. That basically that if they were a champ, they were just going to make the WWF worse and horrible. And he was basically right on all of them because the WWF didn't prosper during those times because people's paychecks were down and viewership was down because nobody liked the storylines.
Well, yeah, once Hulkamania was gone, there was the expected drop, and I think that's kind of like where Bret Hart is kind of like he's kind of an unsung hero in that way because like he kind of shouldered the company during the tough times and kind of brought them out of it, and so like he was kind of the top guy in the company during like the lowest points for WWF.
Yeah, I didn't realize the kind of hard times they went through.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't really pay close attention to it, but I didn't realize that like, oh, they've had some real ups and downs.
yeah. Well, also like the weird thing was like, especially with Bret Hart, is like, you know, like doing shows in America, like they're like getting like a quarter of the like they're filling like a quarter capacity. It's like things were looking really bad, but like when they do tours over in Europe, like a packed house, especially in Germany, like the Germans love Bret Hart.
Yeah. And also, Japan did, and a bunch of other both other countries were huge on Bret Hart, and like that's the reason I think WWF, because they talk about it in the book, like succeeded during those years because the foreign tours were huge.
Yeah.
Not so much that the American stuff was huge.
Yeah, they brought it. They you know that brought them some paydays going over to Europe tour.
But, WWF survived a bunch of shit between the steroid scandal with like wrestlers walking out with shopping bags full of drugs every day.
Yeah,
just like that, and then,
including Vince.
Yeah, including Vince, and then also just between the Gold Dust thing with like transgender people being depicted, and like because kids were like calling everybody faggot on television, shit, and just between that and not paying his wrestlers and treating him well, and the WCW coming in and almost blowing it up. And it's like it survived quite a bit of stuff, and yeah, it still might die at someday, but like it's still going. Is it going strong still?
Like story wise, it's probably at its lowest it's ever been. Talent wise, it's at its highest, and money wise, it's at its highest. Because like they've made more money now than they ever have before because the way they sold their television rights. Like they're going to make like $2 billion over the next 5 years from their television rights. So that's where they make all their money because they're not running house shows anymore. So it's just all television right now. So
yeah, they've really become a television production thing, but that's because of coronavirus.
Yeah. I'm trying. He keeps dropping the title, or he's like drops the title like to Hulk Hogan and then to Yokozuna, which I only know of this era of the WWF because it was called like WrestleMania Arcade or something like that, and it was the one that it was like Mortal Kombat but with WWF wrestlers.
Okay.
And so it had like that digitized it had the digitized versions of the characters, and so it kind of looked like Mortal Kombat. So I remember that game. So it was like Yokozuna, Bam Bam Bigelow, The Undertaker, Doink the Clown, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels. Like that's the only reason I know any of these people from that era. So I probably didn't really like. Probably wasn't really till like I remember the Hulkamania days vaguely because I had friends that were into that, and then it wasn't until like the Attitude Era, which really is birthed from everything around Shawn Michaels or around everything around Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart is from that because you also have Stone Cold Steve Austin, who works for WCW, and then he was in ECW for like a hot minute, and then he came to WWF as the Ringmaster, and then eventually they dropped that, and then he was just Stone Cold Steve Austin. But he was just a heel for a long time, so like he's just going out there being a shithead. And it wasn't until he had that match with Bret Hart at WrestleMania where he turned Stone Cold babyface by beating the fuck out of him so much that he passed out, bleeding all over the place in the sharpshooter. And that's where Stone Cold Steve Austin got a lot of sympathy from the audience, and that's where he kind of became the anti-hero that would end up becoming Stone Cold Steve Austin, was from that match he did with Bret Hart.
Oh, okay.
So Bret Hart kind of made Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then we get into the Montreal Screwjob, which it seemed like that was, Nathan, that was your favorite part of the book.
Oh, yeah. I like the well, first of all, I like the name because it sounds like either something a weird Canadian sex position. I mean, I know a screw job is a general wrestling term, but the thing with the Montreal screw job was it was just the Shakespearean aspects of it were so amazing, because not only was it like controversial as presented, but all the behind the scenes stuff was crazy too. And that's what I.
Well, you have early on in the book where he's talking about him and Shawn Michaels. They're not necessarily friends, but they seem to get along and have really good matches. And it's not really till this moment where there's like really a lot of angst towards each other.
Yeah.
And Shawn Michaels is constantly like kind of going off script and bringing up real life things, which really pisses off Bret Hart. Yeah,
because he's almost making it personal.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, then they.
Bret Hart's always like, he's like, oh man, like Shawn Michaels, what an undeniable talent. Too bad he's totally unprofessional. Oh well, Shawn Michaels is crying again. Shawn Michaels is always crying.
Well, because like he's talking about like the reason why some of these people like was it Diesel and Ultimate Warrior that like blew off or made kids or cancer patients wait to like see them, or just blew them off altogether because they're such great people. It's like, it's like he's right. Like if you can't even face like because he was like the kid that probably wouldn't even see tomorrow, just waiting with the Ultimate Warrior makeup on and waiting for him, and it's like you just made him wait, and then he just blew him off.
I don't need to do that shit.
It's like, what? I mean, yeah, it's sad. It's not like what I would call like the best thing in life to do, but it's definitely the right thing to do. So it makes it weird to like.
I mean,
you won't.
I don't know that Vince. I mean, a lot of those wrestlers that Vince pushed were guys who didn't grow up wrestling. There were guys who were like football players that had injuries that ended their career, but like they're really big and they look buff. So it's like, oh, we can make a wrestler out of them. And a lot of those guys like. They didn't give a shit about wrestling. They just liked the paychecks. And like, they didn't care about like adoring fans. It's like, oh, you're going to like me. I don't care whether you like me or not. I like my paycheck. So a lot of those guys were like it, where like Bret was like invested in like the artistry of wrestling and the industry, which is probably why he was so loyal to Vince, just because like, well, this is where the wrestling is going to be promoted the most, and I'm here as a wrestling artist, and I'm going to bring it to the world.
Was that what's so sad about the Montreal screw job was because he was getting an offer to go to WCW for a lot of money.
Yeah,
and then he's like, I'm not going to do this because Vince McMahon was like a father figure for me in wrestling. He says something like that. I watched the documentary too. And
well, also like Bret doesn't want to go to WCW, and he's gonna stay with WWF for less money, but Vince keeps lying to him.
Yeah, he basically rescinds the offer, and then tells the referee to like, yeah, fuck him, even though he's got him in a hold, he's gonna win. He's like, no, call it. And like the reactions were very real. Like, what the fuck?
Because what ultimately happens is like Bret is the champion at the time. And he tells Vince that he's going over to WCW in like a month or whatever, and he'll drop the title to whoever he wants except for Shawn Michaels, because like he talks to Shawn Michaels backstage, and he's like, it's like I know we don't see eye on a lot of things, but I'm gonna tell you, like, in the ring, I'll never hurt you. I'll always take care of you. And then like Sean goes like, thanks for that, Brett. I can't say the same for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like he's making this like noble proclamation of like, we're professionals. I would never do that to you. And the other guy's like, yeah, we'll see what happens. You know, it's like, what the hell?
Well, because it's just sad because like when they talk about the contract, like yeah, he's gonna make $3 million a year for WCW and have less time on, and he'd basically be able to retire in 3 years.
Yeah.
But Vince McMahon's contract was for $10.5 million, but it was over 10 years.
Oh, he
So it was
signed,
him-
he signed some weird progressive 20-year contract where he just keep getting more money the longer he stayed in, something like that. But
Oh, that's what happened later because I was still up to the point where it's like he's starting to get screwed over by Vince and questioning what the hell's going on with his
yeah.
career when he signs back up. But like he always does these handshake deals with him every time, and it's like, don't do that. Look at the fucking contract and sign it. Because like he goes over as like his lawyer and his
yeah, he's always getting his lawyer for stuff. So, but
well, yeah, but his lawyer actually put in the most protection any wrestler had at that point, which means that Vince couldn't kill his career by making his storyline shit for the last 30 days he was wrestling before he switched companies. And also, he would get guaranteed money even if he got hurt while he was traveling or in the act of wrestling, which was fucking huge because that still doesn't even exist today in the WWF. Like, if you get hurt, you're just fucked. It's like, oh, look.
I don't see. That's the weird dichotomy of Vince McMahon. Is like if you get hurt in the ring, Vince McMahon will pay for everything that for your medical bills, like top notch. Any money that it takes to get you back to health, Vince McMahon will pay for that. But if you have like progressive injuries over the years and you can't make it to work, and then you get fired because you haven't been working in a while, well, then you're fucked. So you better hope you get hurt in the ring because then you'll get taken care of. Otherwise, he doesn't give a shit. Well, unless you make him a lot of money, then he'll care.
Yeah, Vince McMahon is very much like a Donald Trump figure.
Yeah.
Except he actually does run a successful business, but like a bastard. So it's weird that those guys are friends.
Yeah.
It's like there seems to be a lot of cross leadership styles there.
But specifically, what happens in the Montreal Screwjob is that I think it's Survivor Series, and they're in Montreal, and Bret Hart has a match with Shawn Michaels, and in the match, it's supposed to be poetic that Shawn Michaels puts the sharpshooter, which is Bret Hart's finishing move, which is like a submission move.
Yeah.
He puts the sharpshooter on Bret Hart, and then when he turns him over for the thing, Vince McMahon just starts yelling at the ring, the guy who has the bell. He says, "Ring the bell, ring the bell," and then the referee Earl Hebner like declares that like Bret Hart like tapped out, so that's the end of the match, and Shawn Michaels won. But like nothing happened. Like you can see Bret is like trying to continue the match. He doesn't know what the fuck happened. Well, until he realizes like he fucked him over, and then he gets up and he spits in Vince McMahon's face.
Yeah. So, it was cool.
Earl Hebner gets the fuck out of there to avoid getting like tortured to death by the crowd.
Yeah, didn't the crowd immediately figure it out and like went crazy?
Yeah.
Like I remember there was like they cut off the live broadcast because they're like, oh, this might get out of hand,
and then he goes looking for Vince backstage, but Vince locked the door when to answer it, and so he goes back and like takes a shower. But then the Undertaker, he makes an effort. He's like, I'm gonna unfuck this. I don't know what the hell's going on, and so he gets Vince McMahon to come to like the locker room, and then like Bret Hart like gets out of the shower, and he says like, it's like, I'm gonna let you know if you're still here when I'm done dressing, I'm gonna beat the fuck out of you. And Vince McMahon, like, I guess to his word or whatever, stays to take the punishment or whatever, and then when he gets done dressing, he fucking uppercuts Vince McMahon enough to knock him up in the air so that when he falls down, he twists his ankle while he's unconscious.
Holy shit, okay.
And he knocks the fuck out of Vince McMahon. Yeah, there's one of the Vice Dark Side of the Rings. They do a whole episode about the Montreal Screwjob, which is pretty good.
Yeah, it seemed like really like, oh, you don't even have to suspend your disbelief for this. This happened.
Oh, you said you watched which documentary did you watch?
It was the Dark Side of the Ring, the Canadian one.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you watched a different doc, because I know there's a documentary that's mentioned in this book. I can't remember. It's like
No, it's called Wrestling with Shadows.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't seen that one. Is that one good? Is that
It's
all
on
about
YouTube.
this?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, for a non-wrestling fan like me, who's just like reading all this information, it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. It's like I mean, it seemed like because I was thinking when I was reading about this, like, is this all real or is this just a play within a play, wheels within wheels? But no, apparently not.
Well, that's the thing with wrestling. You kind of never know. But
Yeah, and I was suspending my disbelief on this. Like I said, I thought, oh, this has got to be some kind of this is like a big dramatic thing, but there was so much stuff that happened like not filmed of violence and anger. It's like, oh no, these people were legitimately pissed.
So how did Owen die?
So Bret Hart goes to WCW. Owen Hart's still there, and he didn't like they didn't like what they were doing with because this is the Attitude Era, so there was a lot of sex and violence going on in WWF at the time. And so Owen Hart, who's more of a wholesome person, he's probably the best of the Harts, because as far as I know, he didn't cheat on his wife constantly. He didn't do drugs. He was just a nice guy who was a good wrestler.
Yeah.
He was just a slight alcoholic. That's pretty much the best you can
Yeah,
ask for.
but not crazy. Just kind of like, well, we go out with the boys and you get a little drunk, but not
Yeah.
like every day. But also he dies, so he kind of like he's been kind of evangelized that way. Anyways, he doesn't like what's going on at WWF at the time, and so he brings back his mask gimmick. It's like the blue something. He's kind of doing a superhero gimmick, and for some reason they want him to like. He's gonna like descend from the rafters, with this rig, and then he's supposed to like kind of comically land. In order for him to comically land, they want to have like this quick release on the rope, and so whoever rigged it together like just got some boating supply clip at the hardware store. Not like an actual like climbing rig or anything like that. And I guess like while he was like up in the rafters like ready to descend, I guess he like kind of like did a big inhale and exhale, and like the way his chest puffed out, it like added enough pressure to just like pop the clip, and so he basically fell from the top of the rafters into the ring. And apparently
80-foot drop.
Huh? Yeah.
It's like an 80-foot drop.
And apparently he's still alive for about 8 minutes, but his artery was severed from the fall.
Yeah.
And he basically kind of just drowned, and blood filled into his lungs, and he kind of just drowned sitting there.
God damn.
Yeah, essentially he had someone described it as the equivalent of being hit by a car going 50 miles an hour walking in front of it. Like it was just a lot of trauma to his body.
And apparently, like, when he fell, he yelled, "Get out of the way." So that's kind of like, even before his death, he was looking out for other people.
I mean, it's just sad because, yeah, I got to the point in the book where it's like, yeah, it's kind of like foreshadowed a bunch. So it's like I didn't know how quickly it was coming, because it sounded like maybe he might go to the WCW if things went badly. But I don't, like you said, I didn't know a lot about Bret the Hitman Hart before I read this book, and now I know a lot more. Doesn't make me like him at all. But I mean,
I don't know. I think you should watch his match. I mean, I think I don't know. I think Bret. Like, I think the thing about him is just his infidelity is you can't. It's unexcusable. But everything else about him, he seems like a straightforward, honest person. Except with his marriage. If he was just open about that, it would have been fine. But also, like, that world is just it's just a disgusting world. So.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a happy place.
No,
to inhabit.
So yeah, Owen dies. And that kind of like tears the family apart, because they're kind of like choose the four side, or they're forced to choose sides. Kind of, in the book, it's kind of poised as like there's like some of his family, like, so his sisters are married to Davey Boy Smith Jr. and Jim Neidhart, and basically Vince is trying to like pay them off essentially to say like it wasn't their fault that Owen died, and then like hoping on the back end that Vince will give their husbands jobs again.
Okay.
And then Martha, who is Owen's wife, she's suing them. It's like, you know, they go through an investigation and they determine it wasn't like you know, it wasn't intentional murder or anything like that. It was just an accident. So, but yeah, then they try to get like a wrongful death suit, and
It was just
eventually-
plain. Sorry.
And eventually it goes and Martha gets the money, which it has a weird thing where like Brett kind of like concludes that like cause she says like how she wanted justice for Owen, but he said like by the end of it was kind of muddled by like, well, actually she kind of just wanted the money. Well, it's not that straightforward, but it put a bad taste in his mouth. That was like kind of the final interaction he had with Martha, at least in the book. I don't know. It's actually kind of ends up pretty well for them. Like, so they get this settlement that's estimated to be like $18 million or something, but it's not actually released. But like somebody made that number up for some reason, but they can't actually say it. But like, so Martha like goes back to school and she becomes a lawyer, and then like Owen's son, he's a lawyer, and their daughter is a doctor. And then they have an Owen Hart like foundation that does like good charitable work. So like, you know, they put that money to good use. They didn't just fuck around with that stuff. So they did things with their lives after it. So
That's good.
yeah.
I guess something came out of it.
So now you got Brett goes to WCW and they have no idea what the fuck to do with him. Brett kind of seems on autopilot and his injuries are kind of racking up. There's not a lot of famous matches that get brought up with WCW, other than just like eventually Goldberg. He and that's see the stuff I've seen around Goldberg and him. It seems more animosity when you take quotes out of context, because Brett will say stuff like, "Oh yeah, everything Goldberg did hurt." You know, basically saying he was a bad worker and stuff like that. But here in the book, he's not really blaming him. He's just saying like, you know, Goldberg like kind of like rose to prominence way too quickly, and his ability really never caught up.
Oh, okay.
And so he didn't know how to work safely, so he just like made it look good, which means he was just actually hurting people. And so yeah, this is where like Brett gets a miscue from Goldberg, and Goldberg super kicks him in the face and actually just kicks him in the neck and pretty much gives him a concussion. And that's kind of the end of his career, but he keeps wrestling for like another month. And so combined with that concussion on top of him still working, he essentially gets a concussion that lasts for like almost a year, like the side effects. It's
okay.
yeah, it's pretty fucking crazy. Like he's like for almost a year, he's like words are slurring, he has constant headaches. He can't work out, he can't watch TV, he can't listen to loud music. Like it's pretty bad. And then eventually I forget what ultimately ends it, but like somebody gives him a power bomb and he's just like sees stars in this like in his vision, and then like loses time, and then eventually goes and sees the doctor, and the doctor's like, yeah, you're never gonna wrestle again. And then like we're gonna wait 9 months and we'll come back, and somehow he has a hole in his neck. I don't know what they mean by that. He's just like poking his like, yeah, there's a hole here where it's not supposed to be. And then but they wait 9 months and they do like more round of tests, and it's like, yeah, your career's over. Like you've had multiple concussions on top of things, and like you can't do this anymore. And so what's that?
Oh, no, I was gonna say. Plus, his like knees are shot and everything's just going to hell.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like-
Every day is a constant pain. So, so and then he kind of just has this retirement tour, and he can't wrestle again. So he's kind of just making appearances, and eventually they have to fire him. Like they fire him around the point that WCW goes under anyways, so it kind of doesn't matter. Yeah. And then while riding a bike, he like hits a pothole and like goes like head over the handlebars and then hits the ground and suffers a stroke.
Ooh.
And then he spends like a year recovering. Like he's basically essentially paralyzed for like a year, and he has to recover from a stroke. And like, yeah, and there's just more people. Davey Boy Smith dies. Oh yeah, but yeah, a lot of people die of pain medication overdoses. Like there's literally dozens in the book of that happening. Yeah, and that's unfortunately that's just kind of the end of Bret Hart's career.
Yeah.
Now I don't really know what he does. He makes appearances here and there.
Yeah, he's probably doing the appearance circuit.
Yeah. He did the WWE Hall of Fame like 2 years ago, and some crazy fan came up and tackled him in the middle of the ring.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So that was fun. He also like he presented the AEW belt in like one of their pay-per-views, so he came out for that. So he shows up here and there, but I really don't know what he's doing currently. But yeah, it's yeah, just things kind of end really sad. Oh, yeah, and his mom dies because of 9/11. Like she doesn't die during 9/11, but because of the plane situation, like her insulin was like on a plane somewhere and she couldn't get to it, and then she went into a coma because she didn't have her diabetes medication.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was weird.
That was crazy. And his dad dies at some point because the book actually starts with him at his dad's funeral and Vince McMahon's there, just kind of putting FaceTime in and stuff like that. But,
oh, okay.
yeah. So yeah, Bret Hart, interesting life, really good wrestler, kind of a tragedy though. So, but that's kind of that's what happens with wrestlers. Wrestlers' lives typically don't end well. So.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of tragedy around that industry.
Well, I mean, I think it's just especially the way Vince McMahon, like now he might pay for stuff if you get hurt in the ring, but it's like a really fucking, like you're in really good shape, but it's really a rough life of, hitting each other around and working a shit ton of hours, and especially when it's actually like non-COVID and you're traveling everywhere too.
Yeah.
You still get paid well, and I don't know how the travel policy is now.
It's the same, but you still they're still independent contractors. You still have to pay for your room and board and stuff. That's why you have stuff where like wrestlers. There's like 6 wrestlers to one room, and everybody's like it's like a clown car where you have like 8 wrestlers in one car. It's even worse on the indie circuit. You do it all for the love. Well, once you like when you hear him explain like just the goosebumps and adrenaline they get when they're like entertaining literally thousands of people and they're basically commanding their reaction at will, like that's a drug unto itself. Like that's why these people do that, for this one moment in time where all these people are adoring them or hating them, but because they can control thousands of people, it's just a drug unto itself. Like that's why people do this. That's why they come back, even though it does terrible things to their lives, their bodies, and everything else.
Yeah. Well, professional wrestling's still cool, and there's quite a few wrestlers that
all the terrible things in this book are like almost all of them are better now, but it only got better like 5 years ago. So,
a lot of wrestlers seem to die in 2018. Jim Neidhart died in 2018. No,
yeah, his daughter's in WWE.
Oh, she is?
That's not Natalia. Well, one
Big
time had a farting gimmick. Whatever.
Oh.
Vince is a shithead.
Okay, Yokozuna died. Well, not really surprising considering one point they was talking about. Oh, he was
Oh,
700
they
pounds.
talk about
and Vince-
they talk about in the book. Yeah, he was like 39, died of a heart attack in like some sleazy hotel, weighed like 700
Yeah.
pounds. Oh yeah, he wasn't Japanese at all. He was Samoan.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
One of those things. He was Asian facing.
I guess. Yeah, you could say that.
looking at pictures of Stu Hart, for some reason, like whenever like they talk about in the book, he always seems like a super imposing guy, but he wasn't very big. He
No,
doesn't look very big in any of his photographs.
well, I mean,
Not
probably why it made it even worse when he could just beat the fuck out of you with just his hands. You just bring an arm behind your back, and you're like, "Oh God!"
the Stu Hart coloring book. What? Sorry, but no, I thought the book overall was good, and I was really interested to read it, and I'll definitely finish it. But it's something where it's like, oh, I wish I would have had more time, or would have got started on it sooner, because it'd been nice to have all the story in.
Oh, I'm glad you guys read it or enjoyed it because I know you guys aren't that into wrestling, so I was kind of a crapshoot as whether you enjoy this.
I enjoyed it more for just the biopic part of it, basically. Like it's cool to look inside wrestling, but also it's just kind of like a interesting life story in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it because I just learned a lot about that world that I didn't know a lot about it, and it seemed interesting and compelling in certain points. It's like it made sense. It's like, yeah, I could see this.
Oh yeah, that's also like at the Montreal Screwjob. That's also what created the Vince McMahon character. And so like,
Bad boss Vince McMahon.
yeah, because at that time, like most people didn't know that Vince McMahon owned WWF because he was an announcer. Like people knew him as an announcer.
Yeah,
And then after the Montreal Screwjob, then he kind of became a character because he started doing these interviews where like Brett screwed Brett and stuff like that. And then he really became like he became a character in WWF as like, this shithead boss. And that's why, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin was feuding with him and constantly like giving Vince his comeuppance, and that's really what like gave it its greatest success of kind of like of the time in terms of popularity was Stone Cold Steve Austin fighting Vince McMahon. Like that's what like really like that's really catapulted them to the top. So,
oh, okay.
which was all created around that match and Bret Hart.
Yeah.
So Bret Hart inadvertently gave them their greatest success as he left the company.
Yeah. All right. Well, to move on to something less controversial, we watched a movie this week. In our Oliver Stone retrospective, we watched the 1994 Natural Born Killers, which is a movie I've watched 3 times, this being the 3rd time.
Huh.
And as a movie, I actually I appreciate the soundtrack as much as the movie.
Oh, this for me, this is like an all-time soundtrack. Like this is
Yeah,
this is a heavy rotation in my childhood.
Yeah.
Except for Rock and Roll N-Word. I kind of skipped over that song.
Oh, Patti Smith. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was an old song.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that song has like some weird like redeeming values to it. But when you hear a white lady screaming the N-word, it's like let's ignore this.
Well, that song was remixed for the soundtrack. It's not the original form of. I think it was originally, as I remember, because I looked it up.
Isn't that like a cover, or did she write that?
I think she wrote it, but it was I believe, I could be wrong. I think she wrote it, but it was it was redone for the film.
Okay.
Um,
But yeah, this is where I discovered Leonard Cohen because I think I listened to the soundtrack before I ever saw the movie.
yeah, because I had it around all the time.
But this is based on a script from Quentin Tarantino, who, if you ask him, like the script he wrote has nothing to do with the movie that was made,
Yeah,
other than the characters' names.
yeah, he disowned this movie, and he also tried to publish his script for the movie, but got sued by the producers, so he couldn't do it.
I read some trivia that they allowed him to do that eventually, and then
Oh,
also
yeah,
I read
no.
also read some other trivia where he came around on it because apparently he was in an elevator with Johnny Cash and he told him he liked the movie, so he's like, he stopped kind of like hating on the movie for the rest of his life.
Yeah, this movie for me was a weird. As it came out at a time I did not see this in the theater. I don't think
Yeah.
it was playing around us anywhere. But I remember this was like because this had such a great soundtrack and it's kind of such a weird look to it. It was kind of like, oh, this encapsulates kind of the late 80s and early 90s because I think this was the first movie that had like Nine Inch Nails and all that kind of music in it.
Yeah.
And it was also a movie that looked like it was shot by a schizophrenic.
Oh yeah. This is like, what if you gave a college student too much money to make a movie? It's like, this is what would happen.
Yeah.
Which is what's great about it. Just like the collage of nonsense that it does.
Yeah, there's so many
And different film formats that it throws in there. It's like, it's very distracting but cool.
yeah, there's so many high-minded things that Oliver Stone talked about like in interviews with Charlie Rose and like serious conversations about what this movie's supposed to represent. And then you watch it and it's like, oh, this is just a drug and alcohol fueled psychedelic journey through violence.
Yeah.
The glorification of violence in America. And Oliver Stone thought this movie would be controversial enough that it'll end America's obsession with violence. It's like it's going to be so over the top, no one will ever want to worship serial killers and serial murderers and all this stuff. And then, and also when this movie was made, we were kind of at the apex of, well, between the time this movie was started to be made and it came out, that was really like the apex of just crazed violence in America, the hangover from the 80s. Because not long after this, your crime rate started going way down. So at the time he made this movie, this was kind of a
media frenzies around, because like at the very end, you have like the brothers that killed their family, those guys.
Yeah, the
Menendez brothers.
Menendez brothers, and then like Tanya Harding, and then you got OJ, and then like all that stuff was like all happening around the same time, and so
yeah. So this was his like his way at waggling his finger at the mainstream media.
Yeah,
by making one of the most over the top violent movies ever made, with a great cast.
I don't think it's actually that violent. But it is.
It's pretty violent even by today's standards. It's like it's not like grisly horror movie violence, but it's a lot of people being killed. Now I watched the director's cut. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like some people get like their fingers cut off, and like I know that in the director's cut, like Tommy Lee Jones gets his head cut off, but apparently that's not in the first cut of the movie because that was deemed too violent.
Yeah, they don't show that. They just show his head. Like,
yeah, his head bobbing, and you can only really, and it's only if you're looking that it's like, oh, that's Tommy Lee Jones' character. Otherwise, it's just a head and a stick. You don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah, but this movie managed to have a great cast.
Oh yeah, great performances.
Was this Woody Harrelson's first like serious movie, where he wasn't like a comedy?
Maybe.
I think it was.
I thought White Man Can't Jump was like a more serious movie, but
it was still a comedy. And the other one was Cowboy Way. Is that the other movie he did with?
That's kind of an actor.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like this.
No.
This movie's very dark. Like this movie's like, oh, this is like Marilyn Manson's, type shit.
Oh, especially with like the Rodney Dangerfield stuff. Like that's horrific.
Yeah, that's horrible. And he ad-libbed all that.
Jesus Christ.
She's not going to see my face for an hour, and he's talking about having sex with his daughter. And it's like, whoa, this all kind of had that Ren and Stimpy. Some of it had that Ren and Stimpy cartoon element to it also.
Yeah.
Because this was like Beavis and Butthead, Liquid Television. All that stuff was credited with inspiring the style of this movie.
Well, especially like the amount of like rapid cutting that this has.
Oh yeah. Ridiculous. In mid dialogue, we're going to cut. And just have the people talk, but they're going to
We'll cut to a different film format. We'll cut to a cartoon. We're just going to bleed over the film.
Yeah,
we're gonna have real projection, front projection, green screen. Just do all
they did
of
it for $34 million.
I guess at that time,
yeah, not that expensive. for how it looked.
Well, I
but
mean,
it is
like, there's nobody in the cast at this time that's like really commanding that much of a paycheck. So
yeah, I think Oh, was Robert Downey Jr. Was this his up or down swing? I forget where he
I want
was.
to say this is down.
Yeah, probably. Well, I forgot he was a weird Australian in this.
Yeah.
I always thought of him as like just a weird, like he was like who's the guy with the weird mustache that got hit by white supremacists with a chair on TV. They actually
Oh.
wanted him in the movie and he wouldn't do it.
Fucking
Geraldo Rivera.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But yeah, that was but watching this recent or yesterday it's like, oh, this is a mess of a movie.
Yeah. I appreciate a lot of it, but like if you think of it story wise, like it's pretty stupid story wise, but like sequences, I still think like this is great.
Yeah.
My favorite star is the drugstore sequence where it's like the green lighting and there's just like words written on the wall.
Yeah.
And there's like the
It was
cartoon.
very 90s alt rock video
Yeah.
look. Yeah.
That's also probably like one of the biggest action scenes other than the riot.
Yeah. Yeah, because they take mushrooms in the desert and they basically realize they're evil.
Well, they get bit by the rattlesnake and they're trying to.
Oh, yeah, that too, yeah.
After they accidentally kill the Indian guy, that's the only death they feel sorry about.
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't really realize they're evil. They feel evil for killing that guy. But yeah. Young Tom Sizemore in this as the detective. What's his name? Scaramucci or something? I forget. That's not his name.
Scagnetti, because he has that book.
Scagnetti.
It's like that book is like Scagnetti on Scagnetti, and that one guard is like really into him for some reason.
Yeah, and it's the reason he became a detective is because his mom was one of the victims of the tower shooter in Dallas or whatever or wherever that was.
It was in Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Tech.
Austin, Texas.
Austin,
Austin.
okay.
Yeah.
University of Texas campus.
Yeah, that's right.
The bell tower.
Yeah. I forgot how weird Tommy Lee Jones was in this.
Yeah.
He basically played his character Two-Face from the later
Yeah.
Batman movies.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird era for Tommy Lee Jones, where he's like really trying to do something.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
like,
Tommy Lee-
it's like everybody really loved him for shit. What's the movie he did with
The Fugitive.
The Fugitive, where he's just kind of straightforward and like, he's just a man's man or whatever, and then he's like doing like these wacky characters.
Yeah. Because then I remember he played like an Irish bomb maker in some movie, and then
Oh yeah, it's Blown
weird
Away.
stuff. Yeah, and then I played like Ty Cobb brilliantly, but he was the best part of the movie.
Well, he was the bad guy in Under Siege as well, where he played just a weird like
That's right. Yeah,
gets stabbed in the head.
yeah, he was the bad guy in the only good movie that guy ever made.
Steven Seagal.
Yeah, and he went to Harvard, which is like
Yeah.
not what I associate with Tommy Lee Jones, because he's also good friends with Al Gore, because they were roommates at Harvard.
Apparently, that why Oliver Stone likes him a lot is because they're exactly the same age, because they're born on exactly the same day and year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he did a couple. He did a couple Oliver Stone movies. He was
Yeah,
the
he's been in the last three. He's been in JFK, Heaven and Earth, and this.
yeah. Yeah, but this movie is very much a product of its time. To me, to watching it now, it seemed dated. It's like, oh yeah, this was cool.
Yeah,
I remember
Yeah,
this was-
I'm not sure like its message carried forward. I just like I just like it for being crazy. I don't necessarily like get the message out of it or whatever.
Yeah, well, it didn't stick to its message because it was all just hype. It was just like you just made a crazy movie based on a crazy script.
I did kind of like the ending where it's like is it Gale? Who's Robert Downey Jr. play? What's his name?
Oh, Wayne Gale.
Yeah, and he's like pretending to like don't shoot, and then he like shoots the cops, and he's like in on it. It's like
Yeah.
And
I
then
feel alive. I love this.
And then he's trying to cower at the end. It's like, we're going to kill you, Gale. It's like, why? It's like, don't you we left alive? It's like, yeah, we left your camera. Like, he's like, ah. And then he's just like going, oh. And it's like just waiting to die. It's like kind of.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. was probably soaked in drugs when he made this movie. But it worked. I mean, he did a good job. Like I said, I totally forgot he was a weird Australian in this movie, which was supposedly a stab at Rupert Murdoch. He's the king of the yellow journalists.
There's also that weird part where he's like, I was there when Grenada went down. He's like going on it, and everyone's like, what the fuck's he talking about? And they're like, get back on track.
Well, I like when Tommy Lee Jones and Tom Sizemore are walking through the prison, and there's people being pulled out of cells just like covered in blood, and people keep trying to talk to the warden, and he just pushes them away, and they're doing this long shot of dialogue while they're walking, and he's basically pushing the prisoners aside because he wants to. He really likes the Tom Sizemore character, and yeah, there's a lot of like cool shots like that in the movie. I mean, the movie actually gets better as it goes along.
Yeah.
Like once it gets to the prison, you're kind of like into the okay, yeah, this is going to change now, because really when it started, just like, oh, here's a couple kids from the trailer park shooting everyone, and her parents probably should have died. I was okay with that, but there's no one to like in this movie though. That's a really weird thing about this movie. Like there's no heroes.
No.
I think was
that's the point. Yeah, it's like your heroes are the worst people in the movie, because in a world full of violence, it's like, well, the most violent people are the people you look up to or something. That was sort of the point, but like, either you thought it was cool and Oliver Stone pointed out the flaw in your moral fiber, or you thought like, well, all these people are awful, and then you got the point.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember at the time it was very controversial.
Yeah.
And of course, the same media people that he was trying to critique immediately jumped onto this. It's like, what does this say about our culture? It's like, well, exactly what it's supposed to. Yeah, you don't need to look like they totally missed that. But
I like some of the weird in the opening sequence, like a lot of the weird stuff, or like the bullet that suddenly stops in front of the woman's face, and you just cut to like blood's flying all over, or the shot where like it's following the knife as it like twirls and goes through a glass.
Yeah,
like, all that stuff's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's just again, it's another film like kind of like RoboCop. It's just an homage to violence.
Yeah.
But here it's a little more senseless,
cynical.
Yeah. Coca-Cola did not sue the producers of this movie because they tentatively had permission to use the polar bears. But when they saw what they did, they were like, oh, fuck this guy. We're never giving him permission to use anything of ours again. Because they thought it was going to be shown in the background as just one of their commercials.
Yeah. Not just something that interrupts the film.
Yeah.
Fuck it. I forgot what I was going to say.
I hated this movie when I saw it, and I still do. It's probably because the poor storytelling and jumping around and just the way Oliver Stone tells stories. That's why I don't really see him as a good director most of the time. This is the first Oliver Stone movie I ever watched, and I fucking hated it. So, I mean, it has nothing to do with him. I know he makes good movies. It's just like, this was not a good introduction to Oliver Stone, and probably would have been better as like a later movie to watch from him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I see this as like an experimental movie, and I kind of take away like stuff that I think is neat, rather than just like taking away the whole movie.
Yeah,
but I think it was pretty. I mean, it was like, even though it was incoherent, I felt like it was still a pretty easy watch.
Yeah, I mean, well, I say I listened to the interviews and the commentary first before watching the movie, because I was like, well, what does he say? And then I'll watch it, and I was like, huh? Okay.
Also, it's hard to look up trivia for this movie because so much of the trivia is contradictory. It's hard to even talk about this movie as like about it being specific points and everything. So.
Well, I hear there's huge gaps between the theatrical and the director's cut, because it got sent back like 12 times with an NC-17 rating.
Yeah.
So they had to cut like 20 scenes from it to get an R rating, which watching the director's cut, it's just longer. But it's like, well, I didn't see anything in there. But I guess it's like numbers of deaths, and I don't know how they rate movies, like the MPAA or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what.
Well, it's not. There's not like it's a group of like parents that rate it, and it's kind of arbitrary what they'll rate it. So.
Oh, okay.
It's
I thought there was like a checklist.
No, well, it's surmised that there is a checklist. It's like, well, you get one shit or one fuck, and it's still a PG-13 movie. But that's not guaranteed. Like sometimes, if the subject matter of the movie is unconscionable enough, like even like, well, technically there's no violence or swearing in this movie, but we're not going to give it a G because of the subject matter is terrifying or whatever. Well, it's like that movie Frailty.
Yeah.
Like technically there's no violence in the movie. Like I think the only time is like when he hits the dad with the axe, but there's not really like you don't really see it. Like, and that's kind of there's no blood in the movie whatsoever. There's no swearing, and like, but like he Bill Paxton insisted it being an R-rated movie, even though it probably could have got a PG rating, and so it was rated R.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's probably different.
I think that's the story around that. I remember that was sort of like the Shyamalan twist. That was the other Shyamalan twist to that movie, is that there's really no visible violence in the movie. It's just kind of like all in your mind, like, oh, this is horrifying. Let's go kill people with our kids because an angel told Daddy to.
It's a weird movie. I remember watching it. It's like that's kind of cool. It's kind of weird. I'd never seen that before, or thought of that storyline. But yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
this is probably the weirdest video I own in terms of format, because I owned the video for this on Palm OS.
All right.
Back when they had Palm Pilots, I got like a memory card that had this movie on it.
Yes. That would be in a museum piece now. I remember this movie took a year to edit.
Yeah.
Has 3,800 cuts in it. Most films have 400 to 600. So it took a long time to edit this movie.
Yeah, I think there's still maybe they had an Avid. Matt, do you know what an Avid is?
Yeah, the Avid editing. Yeah, I was gonna say like with that many cuts, like you need some kind of non-linear editing system because that's gonna take forever.
So like how did an Avid work? Do you just like did it like do like a digital composite of the film, or did it like cut the film on the fly somehow?
I don't know like how they edited it. Like when did they make this again?
94. Or
90.
Okay.
I guess it'd be editing in 93 technically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Filmed in
I don't
90.
know like if Avid was around yet in 93.
Okay.
If it was, it wasn't going to be like very advanced.
I assume they just physically cut the film together.
They might have.
Well, I read some trivia that made it sound like that. So. And if
Yeah, I'd
that's
have
the
to
case,
watch it.
that would take a long time.
Yeah, that's why it took so long then. Yeah.
A lot of kids from NYU Film School volunteering.
I'll do it.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know. I don't know. I'm just making that up.
It could be. Let's just say that's the truth. That's why not.
I know this movie had a notoriously long production cycle, and the studio was very ambiguous about it when it came out. They're like, okay, this is a multiple Academy Award winning director. Let's, here we go. It was banned in Ireland and UK, but only for like 2 weeks. Then it quietly came out. What are some other things about this movie that were interesting?
Did it do well in the box office, or is it pretty
Nah.
much a fail?
Not really.
It made 50 million stateside, and I think another 20. Let's see, what is box office?
Yeah, it just kind of became more notorious than successful.
Has one of the most famous posters in history. People love the movie poster for it. But yeah, this was a weird movie. A weird movie about a time I remember vividly, and it was the perfect encapsulation of that time. 'Cause he had the new music. He just had this weird ultra-violent movie, and it was supposed to be a social critique of something. It was kind of a mess to watch, but you watched it anyway.
It kind of seemed like an MTV, but with
Yeah.
more violence.
It was very heavily influenced by MTV production styles, and like I said, Beavis and Butthead was cited by Oliver Stone as kind of like the idiot public. Like, oh yeah, that's, because he's always been one of those guys that says Beavis and Butthead's a lot deeper than what people think it is. It's a social critique, and then and of course Liquid Television, a lot of Nickelodeon animation, but it was all thrown in here as kind of a commentary on that. I don't know how successful it was, but I remember it's of its time, and I remember it like, oh yeah. I said it had a good cast. Juliette Lewis is essentially, didn't she play this character like a bunch? She was always like the crazy bad girl in a bunch of movies.
I mean, kind of, but I don't think. I think this is probably the best she played it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think of like what are her best roles was, and I think this might be it. I mean, maybe it's just the most memorable.
Wasn't she in that Brad Pitt movie where she was kind of the same role? I could
Eating Gilbert Grape, or no,
Oh,
that was
Californication, or no? Wait.
California with a K.
Yeah.
Basically the same character.
I can't remember. And then there's Cape Fear. She's basically just the daughter to be.
Yeah,
preyed
Cape
upon.
Fear, she does a good job, but
There, she's more innocent.
well, she did California before this.
Huh.
And then she did Strange Days, where she was kind of the same kind of person, kind of an out of control. And then From Dusk Till Dawn, yeah, I remember that one.
Oh yeah.
But you,
What was the movie where her and Giovanni Ribisi were like mentally challenged and they liked each other? I don't know that
Is
one.
that the other sister?
Yeah,
I think so. And then he likes marching bands, and he's like, "Walking Wally's walking for you." Yeah, what a movie.
the only thing missing from that scene was I have an erection right now. Just
That was in the director's cut. You should see my throbbing baton. That's what he said.
yeah, she seemed to be that kind of, did a lot of movies like that.
I believe she's also a Scientologist, if I recall. So,
Oh.
Oh,
well, no sympathy for her then.
so is Giovanni Ribisi, but
Oh Jesus,
hmm
who isn't a Scientologist anymore?
I'm not. But
What's that? Leah? What's her name?
Leah Remini?
Yeah, she's not anymore.
Yep, she used to be, not anymore.
No. Yeah, Lewis is a Scientology since the early 90s. Said it credited her with getting her off drugs. Yeah, whatever.
She went clear, you guys.
Isn't that always the claim by somebody like Tom Cruise? Like, oh, it made me more outgoing. I got me off drugs. It made me go into debt. Wait, shit, no, that's not the right thing.
Well, yeah, any construct of religion that can get you off that stuff, but
Yeah.
It's more willpower than actual, like, hey, I found religion. Like, oh, okay.
well, I mean that's why the tenets to the 12 steps. It's like you have to like
Yep.
give yourself to a higher power because it's and it doesn't. I mean, it's always forced into some religion, but it doesn't have to be. Like, it could be like, this orange is more powerful than me.
Yeah, great Lord Citrus.
Now, see, I want to see that now.
Yeah, I guess I don't listen to the alcoholics. I go because our hobby shop's right next to an AA meeting that takes place like 3 or 4 times a day. And just like, they're always obnoxious and assholes. So I never really credit alcoholics with doing much, if anything.
3 or 4 times a day is a lot.
Well, it's like they have one at 10, one at noon, one at 3, and one at 5.
You
I
should
think
go to
it's-
one of the meetings and sit in the back and just like, listen.
Interesting about that, like that was one of the that's called The Starfish or the Spider. It's about decentralized leadership, and so that's one of the examples in it because like AA has no, Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't have like any centralized thing, like nobody owns it. Like if you want to
No.
start an AA meeting, like it's just like, well, here's the basic rules, but like you don't have to adhere to anything. You can just make an AA meeting. So that's why it can either work out for you or suck shit because nobody's controlling it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of quality control there. It's
No.
it's a leaderless resistance cell
Yeah,
against
that's it, yeah.
alcoholism.
Well, because there was the guy that was on probation that used to go to the shop, and he was looking for a rehab group because he went to jail for pot or something like that. And so he was asked them if he could join because it's like, oh, is this rehab or like talking group for like any kind of substance abuse? Oh no, only alcohol. That's the real addiction. And it was like, yeah, I don't think anybody sucks dick for a whiskey in back of a parking lot, but that's just me. I mean, as far as I know, that's not a major problem.
That's why
but
they call
maybe
you
it's
whiskey dick.
That's where
Whiskey-
that came from, man.
Whiskey Dick Johnson.
A lot of the
But
people
no.
I know that are in AA, and trust me, there's a lot of them at work. Yeah, they always talk fondly about the 13th step, which is basically going
Giving
there
up.
to meet women. Yeah, it's like that sounds deeply immoral and strange, but
No, that's interesting.
that sounds like
to-
that has like Fight Club vibes almost.
a little bit.
I'm not even an alcoholic. I just go here to have sex with the alcoholic ladies.
Well, from all the people that have been hanging out there, I wouldn't classify. I mean, anybody can fuck anybody, but yeah, they're a bunch of. They all love their cigarettes and they all love anything else like playing lotto tickets and shit from them yelling and bitching about shit. And it was like, well, you traded one addiction for another. Good job.
Exactly. Like quit smoking and gain 400 pounds. It's like, well, I'm not smoking anymore.
But I love food.
Yeah.
That vaguely reminds me of one of the most haunting sentences from the Bret Hart book.
Hmm.
I forget, he's at another one of his low periods, and he's talking about like, if I wrote a will, it would be 3 sentences long. If I wrote a suicide note right now, it would be 3,000 pages.
That's pretty.
Place.
But that book's only 500, so don't write any more, Brett.
2,400 characters or words left.
Well, I mean, he seemed to get a lot out of that book, so I don't know how much he's really got left to say. I guess.
Well, that
but,
book essentially ends in like 2008, or that's when they finished like working on it. So there's 12 years after that.
He's got more to talk about. I follow him on Instagram, but I don't really see him post very much. So.
I didn't know he was he's on Twitter or Instagram.
Yeah, I forgot that he was.
I don't do,
like,
I don't
wait
do
a second.
anything on Instagram. I forgot. I browse Reddit and occasionally Instagram things pop up.
There you go.
I mean, who isn't on Instagram or Snapchat or some other fucking thing
I'm
anymore?
on none
that's
of
like
those
that,
things.
so-
Like I just have, like I have a Twitter and I have a Facebook, and I don't even want a Facebook. I just keep it around.
So
for
I can put things on
emergencies or something.
Just in case.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched any news or paid attention to anything on Facebook in a week because
Good
I don't
for
think
you.
the world's going to end now. It's like, well, am I going to have to look to the sky and see the missiles? But Trump's not president anymore, so I'm just not paying attention. Like, oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been 4 years of hyper attention. Take a break.
But the other thing I was seeing on Reddit, the Dr. Fauci like doing a press conference without Trump. How happy he is now that he can actually like just do his
He's like,
job.
I can talk freely and nothing happens.
yeah. But then I read things like they'll say like, oh, the people on I forget which site it was where they had all the QAnon stuff. It's like
Parlor.
someone deleted it all because they say it didn't come true and it was a lie and QAnon's collapsing. It's like, well, yeah, didn't you see this coming? I mean, any religion that gives you an end date or an apocalypse time, when that time passes, they always fail. That's why.
That's all or nothing. Either it's true or it's all bullshit. There's no in between on that.
Now on to the next conspiracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have TikTok, but my wife does, and she showed me this one lady that was crying and like, God, you let the devil win. Please help us, Joe Biden. And it's like, what the is wrong with you people?
I got one Facebook post from one of the military guys. It wasn't directly to me. It was just showed up in the timeline. And it was just like mentioning like the stock market and what gas costs, and like this will all go away when Trump's not president anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of other stuff that will go away, like existential dread.
Yeah, I'll take that. That's fine with me. I'll get
Yeah,
rid of
this,
that.
this
That's
is about
cool.
the crazy people that were somehow comforted by the president of Trump. Like, haha, hey, he's giving it to those libs.
Yeah, he's making them cry. Mm.
Well, because the newer guy I work with on Friday was like, "Oh, you hear gas is over $3 a gallon now," and I'm like, "Where the fuck are you talking about? California?" He's like, "No, at Alburnett or whatever." I'm like, "Well, I think you're getting gouged because it's only like $2.30 or whatever."
Yeah,
It's
I
not
just
fucking.
pull up Gas Buddy on my phone. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure all that stuff will probably go up, but it's like, what are we supposed to do? We have maniacs running the country. I mean, I'm not going to want to pay more for gas either, but like I said, I don't want to die in some kind
Having
of
a government that doesn't work somehow keeps the gas price low, and that's good for me.
Yeah, I don't know how it happens, but it's some invisible hand of capitalism.
Well, there is
Whatever.
something I heard about, like with the Keystone Pipeline.
I'm assuming that's what it is, but
Well, no, this was stuff like I have a lot of union pages on my Facebook, and it's like, yeah, all those jobs disappeared. It's like they never built it yet. What
I
fucking?
was gonna say,
job?
yeah, it doesn't exist yet, but
I mean, all the thing that I've heard about the Keystone Pipeline, because I did actually went and researched it because I was like getting all this weird messages like, "Yeah, you fucked us already." It's like, well, I'm not a steam fitter, so he didn't fuck me, but that was just a pass through for another country. Like there was some tangential money we got, but it was basically so Canada could sell natural gas out of the port of Gulf of Mexico, and we didn't get a lot of money out of it. Now, if they want to go back and renegotiate that deal so we get something out of it, then yeah, build pipeline. But if it's just a giveaway for, it's like, well, why are we doing it? Why would we have a dangerous thing like that where we better get some money for it? You know, if a bunch of kids get dental care because we can pay for it with the Keystone Pipeline, cool, build 20 of them. I don't care, but don't make it sound like we just lost like 100,000 jobs to. Were they building this? Is this like a space elevator they were building that Biden canceled or something like that?
I think they probably just misunderstand. I think it's Keystone beer, so that's what it is.
Well, it's just
They're
all
all-
Keystone
weird.
Keystone beer,
Yeah.
Keystone Pipeline, Keystone Cops.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I like all those things. Damn it, Joe Biden.
It's why you can't, it's just like you can't win with these people though because they just believe this nonsense. It's like, well, go
'Cause
look it up.
they're irredeemable morons. It can't be reached. So good for them.
I looked it up on CNBC. I didn't even have to pay for access.
Yeah, they don't have the critical thinking skills to even look up things or research or anything. They're just like, well, someone told me, so it must be true. Oh well.
Somebody
What?
told me.
Well, I was going to do a segment on the show because a lot of people were upset about Parler getting deplatformed, and because I had a Parler account, but I would only go through and look for the worst things I could find and screen cap them because I was going to read them on the show. It's like, this is why Parler got banned. It's not because some of the stuff was so horrible. It's like I can't read this out on YouTube. It's like
No,
They'll
it'll probably get taken
ban it.
down.
but it was horrendous, like weird shit, and I had like a whole file of Parlor screen caps I did, but I just deleted it all because it's like, well, I can't. This stuff is so weird. I can't read this out even for humor. But yeah.
What if you did a funny voice?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's hard to describe the murder of children with a humorous.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to do. That's a hard needle to thread. I get it.
Yeah. But
yeah,
it was the
Parler-
people that were murdering children were like the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Bush appointee, by the way. And all these people that like things Mike Pence was doing, like, well, he's part of it too now. It was just crazy shit. And but then it all got deleted, and I'm like, well, I don't have to go there anymore and witness the decline of America. Because they made it sound like it was just Sean Hannity and a few people on there talking. It's like, no, it's the worst Nazi shit you've ever seen or read in your life, and it is threatening to kill people and all that stuff, which you can't do. You can't do that.
Yeah, that's not free speech. Threatening to kill people and threatening violence, that's not part of free speech. So
You can say really weird shit, but you can't incite violence.
exactly. There's like billboards around town. I don't know if you've seen them, where it's like Big
America
Tech
equals
is sent-
freedom.
Yeah, like there's ones like big tech is censoring your free speech. Every time I see those, I'm like, fuck off. Like, it's like you guys don't understand.
Oh no,
free
it's
speech
yeah.
at
There's one that's a flashing billboard that says occasionally it flashes America equals free speech or something.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's like,
Oh,
no,
what
no. You
subtle
don't,
nuance
free
thing
speech
you-
is a little more nuanced than you can say whatever you want anytime. That's not what free speech is.
No.
Yeah, well, what we're doing is free speech because we don't have any special skills or knowledge, and we're just free balling about the things we like
So-
or enjoy.
yeah.
And even if we said something that YouTube took us down, that's still not the government coming in and like taking
No, yeah.
not
Yeah.
putting us in jail for saying it. That's just YouTube taking us off their platform, which they can do because we're using
Yeah.
their shit.
They're a private company. They have every right to do
It's
that.
when the
So,
government comes and stops you physically from talking that's that's invading on your free speech. Otherwise, it's nothing happened.
yeah,
And that hasn't happened. So.
It's just
No,
that
less,
is not.
it becomes less convenient for you to spew your hatred. It's like, oh, now I'm gonna have to get a printing press. And
yeah, I don't really want to do
You
that.
have to run those old printing presses that go back and forth like this, so I can call Kennedy a communist or something.
Yeah, everyone's a socialist, everyone's a communist or a Marxist. It's like, what the? Dude, there was a political cartoon I saw the other day that was Joe Biden, and instead of his hand on a Bible, it was like a Karl Marx book and like all this other stupid shit. And then Xi Jinping, or however you say his name, the leader of China, was behind him with a Winnie the Pooh lapel on his suit jacket. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't understand.
I love how the most establishment process Democrats that have been elected since Bill Clinton are somehow communists.
Yeah, they're radical communists. Yeah, I
It's
don't
like, oh, these
understand.
people love money, and all of them do. Like
Yeah, I was gonna
Nancy
say-
Pelosi is some Marxist agent. It's like her and her husband are worth $500 million. I mean, they
Yeah.
don't.
And she's not sharing that money, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the both parties are ridiculous. They're this different sides of the same coin. So I mean, it just depends on like which they both do different things poorly, and yeah, I don't know. It's just stupid that like everyone's a socialist. Like, what are you talking about?
Let's talk about the real problems.
I want to help
Yeah.
my fellow Americans, and so I gathered together some resources so we can help our fellow Americans. Like, you fucking communist!
Yeah, they didn't earn those resources. They got to pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Give me those resources.
Well, there's
They
this
got to buy their own dip.
there's this person we know because we frequently Facebook. We frequently have conversations with people, and
Hmm.
I'm just going to keep this vague. But they were talking about student loan forgiveness and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
my wife was saying, "Well, I had to pay when I go to college. When I went to college, I paid for nursing school, and I paid it off, and it was a lot of money." But it's like I would still be for student loan forgiveness. And she said, not even necessarily for like our kid being in school, but people with incomes below like $50,000 a year. It's like I think those kids should have debt forgiveness. And somebody chimed in. It's like, well, I didn't go to school and I worked 3 jobs and it was hard, but I eventually made it. This person married a guy with a bunch of money and is a stay-at-home mom now, and this is making it for her. But we're all a bunch of communists because we think that maybe poor people should, their kids shouldn't have to pay, get $500,000 in school loans. But she said this was her hard luck story.
You know how many sad blowjobs she had to do to get to that point?
Well, I immediately wanted to jump to that, but that would be, what do they call that? Slut shaming or something? It's like,
Well, no, I mean, she's not.
Now I'm
slamming her
just
for that.
imagining-
It's more that she cried during it. Why can't she just suck it up and do it?
Now I'm just imagining Eeyore giving blowjobs.
Okay.
Is there a blowjob forgiveness plan? Maybe she'd be on board
Yeah,
with.
so we
Like,
forgive those.
I can't return this blowjob. Fuck you, Walmart.
Yeah, that's the whole problem. Like, there's certain people, not everybody, but there's certain people that like I can't let anything good happen for anybody else because it didn't happen to me, and that's
Yeah.
completely fucked up. Like, it's weird. Whether it's like healthcare or debt forgiveness for student loans, like I didn't get that. Well, also when you went to college, it cost $600 a year. You fuck. Like, it costs
or
a
it
lot
was
more
someone
now.
like this who has no self-awareness of like, you fucked the right guy, congratulations. But yeah,
Good
fuck
job.
all these poor people. Or I have people, I have arguments and conversations with people at work
Mhm.
about fuck the $15 minimum wage. It's like, wow.
Oh, that too. I hate that one too.
It's
How
like
dare
what you
someone
think you
make a living wage?
you make $70,000 a year, and what you think you're like right next to Warren Buffett, and we got to fuck all these poor people. It's like,
What?
what are you talking about? If people,
No.
what's that going to do? What good's that going to do? I
Well,
said, well, these people won't be stealing, and
Yep.
Well, somebody made a great point where like they're saying like like talking about fast food, and they're saying like people have a wild idea of how much of that money you pay to fast food goes to the workers because it's not a lot.
No.
Yeah.
What they say, like Denmark, you make $24 an hour.
Yeah,
like
they
that
make,
minimum
like-
wage,
yeah,
and
they
it's
make
like
a
a
lot
buck
more
more
money.
for a meal than it is here in like real dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't
Dollar
affect the
more.
price at all.
Well, that's like
that,
when the auto workers were getting savaged in 2008 with the auto collapse. They said, well, if you paid them guys less, cars wouldn't cost that much. And then Chrysler pointed out, it's like, well, labor is actually 3% of the cost of building a car. Most of it's like steel and rubber.
Yeah, the materials.
And maintaining the energy on the you'd be surprised what it costs to keep the lights on in one of those places too. It's really, really expensive. I mean, to the
that.
like $100,000 a day, but also they're using
Because
like
how many hours a
1,000
day is
volts.
that? Is the plant running all day long, or is it
22
shut down at any
hours.
point? Okay.
Run 22 hours on a 5-day rotation, then 12 hours on a 2-day weekend swing schedule where both shifts don't work. But yeah, I mean, like where I work, when they inductively were welding steel together, it was like 10,000 volts running to those lines.
That's a lot of energy for that.
That's a lot of energy.
Huh.
So it's the cost of
It
you'd be
doesn't take as
surprised-
much to make a Whopper. Let's just say that.
Well, you'd be surprised how much like what people make versus what it costs to run a business, what the cost breakdown on anything is.
Yeah, overhead.
It's like labor is a factor, because when you get into like pensions and healthcare and all that stuff we have here to deal with, like that starts racking up, but still it's not even 10%, 12%.
Well, like, why is it a bad thing to pay people for what they're worth? Like, why is that such a big? Oh, we can't do that.
Well,
But it's okay for the CEOs to make 300 times more than a normal person. That's okay. But
well, the real argument is some free market gobbledygook that they'll tell you, but the real answer is they don't want to be within $10 an hour of or they don't want the poor people to be within $10 an hour of what they're making because they feel superior and special.
yeah, they don't want to.
Because I know a lot of guys I work with that feel like, oh, I'm special. It's like, oh no, dude, you're not. You have no skill. It requires no skills to have this job. We just got lucky. We were related to the right people. We knew someone, or we got in here somehow. You have. If this all ended tomorrow, we would literally be under a bridge sucking dick. I mean, we have nothing to offer the market except 30 years of working in a factory, which people don't respect you for that. Or at least, I mean, they should respect you for that.
I respect
a
you for
marketable skill.
I admire that. I couldn't work 30 years in a factory, so.
Well, I don't want to, but it looks like
I know. I understand. I'm just saying I respect what you've done.
But yeah, I mean, the real reason is just people's insecurity.
Yeah, like for instance, like I get paid $15.50 an hour, so they'd be within 50 cents of what I make. I don't care. It's fine. I want people to make more money. That's better for everybody.
Yeah,
like, I don't give a shit. But some people are like, "Oh, can't have that. That's not cool. They don't deserve it." Like, then who does deserve it? That's what I would like to know.
Well, because the same argument the last time minimum wage, you want to buy a decent chunk, and not even the same kind of raise as right now, where it's like, oh, you're not going to be able to afford anything. Costs are going to go sky high. And then what happened? Things went up a tiny little bit, and they've been going up ever since. So it's just like it hasn't really materialized, but you can still stick to the same argument every time.
Well, technically, if I had a machinist job, I'd be a skilled laborer, and the job offers I get from my machinist skill is $16 an hour for a skilled labor.
Yeah, so that doesn't make you feel too good about. Oh, what kind of how highly regarded is this skill if I'm getting paid that much?
That's why I'm pretty quiet about things money-wise, because I'm just like, ooh, I got to be the invisible man. I'm lucky because I'm really skating by here. Because, there's people that are like, skilled trades workers that it's like, they don't make $20 an hour, no benefits, no pension, nothing. Some guys work out of a local or a job shop, but that's become seasonal in this economy. It's like, you could make $150,000 a year as a union, electrician around here or a rod buster or something. But if you're only working 6 weeks a year, you're not making that kind of money.
No.
But so it's like, yeah, I just keep quiet.
So you
and
watch
kinda listen.
The Deadliest Catch. It always seemed like a dream. It's like, you mean I just work 1 month and then I'm done for the year?
Yeah.
I was like, and I might die, but if I get through it,
Very high probability you will die horribly getting pulled off of a crab boat into freezing Bering Sea water.
what's worse, that or dying in a submarine? I'm not sure.
Neither one is good.
Well, I mean, you can still be in cold water in a submarine and die in cold
Yeah.
water. In
That's
a
true.
submarine.
Or you can get in amazing shape and become a professional wrestler. I mean, that's
And
really
die
the
from
dream.
a drug habit.
Not even a drug habit that like, ooh, I love drugs. It's like, ooh, I just don't want to be in
I
pain.
need to get to work tomorrow. Give me the drugs.
Yeah, it's fine.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
think minimum
man,
wage
when-
should be
when-
like. Oh, sorry.
Well, I was
Go
going to go
ahead.
back to Bret Hart when he got a concussion and he was doing 4 Advil every 3 hours. Like, Jesus
my God.
Christ.
Surprised he had a liver left.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
the doctor told him if he kept doing that, he would have a hole in his stomach. So,
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say I think minimum wage should be at least $15 an hour. We should be giving people socialized medicine to help with that cost because that's going out of control, and nobody wants to do that either. Even though the cost is actually less, and to provide better options for people, we should be giving anybody that's a trade job, people that actually have a skill or have an education, better options than 15 or 16 bucks an hour with $100,000 or $200,000 worth of debt out of college, or just years after college either. I mean, yeah, you can't pay somebody $80 an hour to do that job, but I think 30 or 40 sounds reasonable. I mean, there's no middle class in this country anymore. It's all fucking gone. You're either poor or you have money. There's no in between.
are you poor or do you have 3 jobs and a house you don't live in?
Yeah, I'm here to
I
see.
mean, especially now, like in Iowa, like you can't even fucking buy a house for. Used to be like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, you could buy a decent house for $100,000. Now it's $160,000. That's like almost double the fucking cost in 9 years. How the fuck are you gonna afford that if you're making still the same wage as you did 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, that's why the boomers just own a lot of shit and rent it out to all us millennials.
I know, but rent's even more expensive. You got a mortgage on that house, it'd be $900, but rent's $1,400.
I was looking at houses and shit, and there's like stuff where it shows like what it would cost to like rent it out, and it's like, oh, the payments on this house are like $800 a month. What they recommend you rent it out as is $1,400 a month.
Yep.
And so it's like, what, you mean it's essentially cheaper for me to buy this house than to rent,
And rent it. Yep.
Yeah, and that's
But-
the fucking shitty part. 'Cause it's how the fuck you. I mean, it's cheaper to buy the house, but then you have all the financial obligation, which means that you're paying. I mean, by the time you look at depreciation and how much you're putting into the house every year, you're paying more than $1,400 a month for that to keep it in the state it was when you bought it, or better. So I mean, it's just like renting might be the better option in that, but yeah, you pay technically more up front. So I don't know. I guess I'm just frustrated because like everybody thinks that nobody should make any more money anymore besides themselves because they're the really downtrodden ones.
Well, no, the thing
But they're-
is, I think the thing that what always gets around, it's like it always comes around to fast food jobs. We're just like somehow like there's jobs that are just lesser than. Like, it's
Yeah.
a job. Fuck you.
Yeah, they're just like anyone else. They need to put food on the table or support their kids or whatever. It's like they're not not as deserving just because they work at McDonald's. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
And like,
And I can't do those jobs. I had a fast food job. I got fired the second day. Like, what do you want? I can't make this many
Yeah,
hamburgers.
there's a
fast.
skill to it.
Yeah.
You gotta
I
do
know.
math, you gotta do customer relations, and like you gotta like time management. Like it's
Yeah,
like,
it's not easy.
and it's fucking stressful. Like, fuck you,
Yeah.
it's not skilled.
There's people yelling at you for you're like, you know how much I make? Shut up. Like, I think it was like a year and a half ago. I covered the McDonald's on First Avenue here in town. The workers are having a strike. Like, they're outside in front of McDonald's and they're demanding, the $15 an hour. There was multiple different people that drove by and told them, F you, you don't deserve that kind of money. It's like, what are you, okay. And like, these are people in like shitty cars yelling at other poor people. You don't deserve that. I want all the crumbs.
I love the
It's like-
poor against the poor.
Yeah, that's great class warfare. It's wonderful.
Well, that's fucking America, though. That's the story of this country.
Yes.
When they always say it's like, yeah, how come the Europeans do this and we do that? It's like, well, because we've been run by oligarchs basically since the founding of this country.
Yep.
It's like this is a place where some people will make outsized wealth, but it's also a place where most people will live in poverty, and they won't have a chance at even like basic shit.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I can be kind of conservative too on some things. I don't think it should be a fucking free for all, but I don't want to see people, no one working a full-time job in this country should wonder. It's like, well, what are we going to eat this week? That's insane.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to sit around and smoke crack and fucking burn your city down, don't think I'm going to come to the rescue. Here, take all my money. No. We're not doing that. But people that are actually making a go of it, like, you just can't fuck people over like that. And the people that are getting fucked over, that are trying to make a go of it, are being fucked over by billionaires at this point. People that couldn't spend all their money if they wanted to. Just nothing they could do. I mean, they're trying. They're trying to build their Elysium or whatever, but... at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of public sentiment against that too. So, but people don't know, it's hard to know which way to jump.
I don't know, but at the same time, I mean, I think people should be able to. I mean, yes, individual saving and prosperity sometimes depends on the person, and you can't make somebody prosperous. They have to want it for themselves. But I mean, you at least have to give them that opportunity by giving them a fair wage, the ability to save money and build a future, because people actually want to do that. They don't want to lie. They don't want to lie in a pool of their own filth doing drugs all day. They want a house and something they can build towards and think they have a good life and something's going to go forward from it. That's what the whole responsibility is, giving people all these benefits that they actually deserve as a right. It's not because it's a libtard thing. It's because that's the way our society has actually progressed, but we're still stuck in the fucking 1950s or whatever, where everybody is just like a sweatshop worker and they only make as much money because, the fast food guy doesn't have as skilled a job as you. Oh no, but it doesn't mean they can't make good money. I mean, they still work hard. They don't show up every day going, I got an easy job, let's make some money. I mean, that's why I'm so pissed with my management. Every time they go into interviews, like we just had interviews this week for crating, and the crater that was sitting on the interviews was gone. I'm the only one person that still works there with crating experience. Do they ask me to sit on the interview? No, they ask their best friend, ass kisser buddy, to sit on that has no experience with it. And their whole attitude is like, oh, if somebody applies from Walmart or McDonald's or Target, fuck them. They don't have any skill. Even though we'll hire somebody because there's no skill involved in this job and anybody can do it. But fuck those people because they're not good enough to work here. And it's like, oh, that's great. That's a great message to hear because, all these people definitely – there's plenty of people that work with you, Conlon, and plenty of people that work at all these places that deserve a better shot than the shit they're getting now. And it just pisses me the fuck off.
Yeah. Well, that's like I said, that's that inferiority complex. But anyway, it's almost 1:30, so I think that's a wrap for this week.
Right.
This week for the American Greed Factory podcast, this is Nathan.
This is Conlon.
Andrew?
And Matt.
Goodbye, America.